The moment I heard her whisper, "Drive somewhere private," I knew my entire life was about to collapse. I'm Ryan Cole, single father, struggling to keep my daughter fed and my dignity intact. One wrong move could destroy everything I've sacrificed to build. But when your billionaire boss's wife looks at you with eyes that scream terror instead of temptation, when her voice cracks with something darker than desire, you realize some requests aren't what they seem. This is the story of one night that forced me to choose between the safety I'd built and the man I needed to become. Stay until the end, hit that like button, and comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. The Los Angeles skyline shimmered through the windshield like scattered diamonds on black velvet, each light representing someone's dream, someone's struggle, someone's compromise. Ryan Cole had long stopped seeing beauty in it. To him, it was just another reminder of the distance between what this city promised and what it actually delivered. His hands gripped the steering wheel of the midnight blue Mercedes S-Class at exactly 10 and 2, the position they'd taught him in the defensive driving course his employer had paid for. Everything about his posture, his route, his existence had been carefully calibrated for one purpose: don't mess up. "Thank you for waiting, Ryan," Mrs. Victoria Ashford said as she slid into the back seat, bringing with her the scent of expensive perfume and white wine. "The gallery event ran longer than expected." "Of course, Mrs. Ashford. It's no problem at all." Ryan's voice carried the practiced neutrality of someone who'd learned to make himself invisible. In the rearview mirror, he caught a glimpse of her, early 30s, wearing a dress that probably cost more than his monthly rent. Her dark hair pulled back in a way that made her look both elegant and exhausted. The art gallery in West Hollywood faded behind them as Ryan navigated toward Pacific Palisades, where the Ashford mansion sat perched above the city like a crown on a king's head. This was routine. Over the past 18 months of working as personal driver for Michael Ashford, tech billionaire, venture capitalist, and certified member of the 1%, Ryan had driven Victoria home from charity galas, shopping excursions, and cultural events at least 50 times. She was always polite, always distant, always perfectly composed. Tonight felt different. Ryan couldn't pinpoint exactly what had changed. Maybe it was the way her hands trembled slightly as she fastened her seatbelt. Maybe it was how she'd avoided eye contact when she got in the car. Maybe it was the fact that she'd arrived at the pickup point alone, without the usual entourage of socialite friends or her husband's ever-present assistant. They drove in silence for the first 10 minutes, which wasn't unusual. Ryan had learned early in this job that wealthy people often treated drivers like ambulatory furniture, present but not really there. He'd made peace with it. Invisibility paid well, and he needed every dollar. "Ryan?" Her voice cut through the quiet, softer than he'd ever heard it. "Yes, Mrs. Ashford?" A pause. In the mirror, he saw her staring out the window at the passing lights. "How old is your daughter now?" The question caught him off guard. In all their interactions, Victoria had never asked him anything personal. "She just turned 7. Why do you—" "What's her name again?" "Emma." Ryan felt his chest tighten, the way it always did when he thought about his little girl, currently asleep at their neighbor Mrs. Chen's apartment. Emma, with her missing front tooth and her obsession with dinosaurs, and her laugh that sounded exactly like her mother's. Emma, who was the only reason he got up every morning and put on this uniform and swallowed his pride. "Emma," Victoria repeated, as if testing the name. "That's beautiful. Does she know how lucky she is? To have a father who actually shows up?" Ryan frowned. The comment felt loaded, heavy with something he couldn't quite identify. "I'm the lucky one, Mrs. Ashford. She's everything." Another long silence. They were on Sunset Boulevard now, heading west. The route to the Ashford estate was so familiar Ryan could drive it in his sleep, which he sometimes felt he was doing after these late-night runs. Then Victoria said something that made his blood run cold. "Drive somewhere private." Ryan's foot instinctively eased off the accelerator. "I'm sorry?" "Please." Her reflection in the mirror looked directly at him now, and what he saw there made his stomach drop. Not seduction, not some wealthy woman's bored attempt at scandal. "I can't go home yet. Just drive somewhere we can talk. Somewhere he won't find us." Every alarm bell in Ryan's head started ringing at once. This was exactly the kind of situation they warned you about. The kind that ended with HR investigations, termination, lawsuits. The kind that destroyed the careful stability he'd spent 3 years building since Sarah's death. Mrs. Ashford, I don't think... I'm not trying to... She stopped, seemed to gather herself. Please, I just need an hour. Somewhere away from cameras, away from that house, away from him. Please, Ryan. His hands tightened on the wheel. The smart move was obvious. Drive her home. Tell Mr. Ashford his wife had seemed upset. Protect yourself. Ryan had a 7-year-old daughter whose entire world depended on his paycheck. He couldn't afford complications, couldn't afford risks, couldn't afford to be anything other than exactly what his job description required. But there was something in her voice that he recognized, the same desperate edge he'd heard in his own voice 3 years ago, standing in a hospital corridor, being told that his wife's injuries from the accident were unsurvivable. The sound of someone drowning. Ryan's mouth moved before his brain could stop it. There's a jazz bar on La Cienega. It's quiet, anonymous. We can talk there. Thank you, she whispered, and he heard her exhale like she'd been holding her breath. 20 minutes later, they sat in a corner booth at the Blue Note, a place Ryan had discovered during the dark months after Sarah died when his apartment felt too empty and silence felt too loud. It was the kind of establishment that attracted people who wanted to disappear for a while. Dim lighting, live music soft enough to talk over. A bartender who'd seen everything and judged nothing. Victoria had insisted on sitting where she could see the door. Ryan noticed she kept glancing at it, like she expected someone to burst through at any moment. I come here sometimes, Ryan offered, trying to ease the tension. After late shifts, the music helps. She wrapped both hands around the coffee cup he'd ordered for her. Your wife, how long has it been? 3 years, 4 months, 16 days. The precision startled even him. Car accident, drunk driver ran a red light. I'm so sorry. Victoria's eyes glistened. And you've been raising Emma alone since then? Ryan nodded. Her grandparents are back in Ohio, but we're not close. It's just been the two of us. Well, us and Mrs. Chen from apartment 3B who watches Emma when I have these late shifts. That must be terrifying, being someone's everything. Every single day. Ryan took a sip of his own coffee. But it's also the only thing that makes sense anymore. She needs me, so I show up. Simple as that. Victoria stared into her cup. Nothing about love is simple. They sat in silence as a saxophone player on the small stage began a slow, mournful rendition of Round Midnight. Ryan waited, sensing that pushing her to explain would only make her retreat. Finally, she spoke. Do you know what it's like to disappear while you're still alive? Ryan thought about the last 3 years, the way he'd turned himself into a function instead of a person, existing only to work and parent, never allowing himself to want or feel or risk anything beyond the basics of survival. Yeah, he said quietly. I think I do. I used to paint. The words came out barely above a whisper. Before I married Michael, I had a studio in Silver Lake, showed my work in galleries, actually sold pieces. Nothing that made me rich, but I was building something mine. What happened? Michael happened. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Don't misunderstand, he didn't forbid me from painting. He's too sophisticated for that. He just managed me away from it, slowly. Suggestions about networking events I should attend instead of studio time. Concerns about the kind of people in the art scene. Renovations to the house that somehow never included space for my work. Before I knew it, 5 years had passed and I was Mrs. Michael Ashford, and Victoria the artist had just evaporated. Ryan had met Michael Ashford dozens of times, watched him at charity events, driven him to business meetings, listened to him on conference calls. The man was brilliant, charismatic, the kind of person who seemed to bend reality around his own vision. He seems like he treats you well, Ryan said carefully. Victoria laughed, a sharp sound that cut through the jazz like breaking glass. He does. That's what makes it so impossible to explain. He's never hit me, never screamed at me. He buys me beautiful things, takes me beautiful places, introduces me to beautiful people. On paper, I have a perfect life. But I can't breathe. Her hands shook around the coffee cup. Every decision about what I wear, where I go, who I see, what I say, it all goes through this filter of what Michael thinks is appropriate for his wife. And the worst part? He's convinced himself he's protecting me, guiding me, helping me be my best self. Ryan thought about the countless times he'd driven Michael and Victoria together, the way Michael's hand would rest on the small of her back, steering her through crowds, the way he'd answer questions directed at her, the way he'd laugh and say, Victoria doesn't really follow politics, or Victoria's not much of a reader, when she'd started to venture an opinion. How long have you felt like this? Always, I think, but I'm only now finding the words for it. Victoria met his eyes. 3 months ago, I saw a photo of myself from our wedding. I didn't recognize her. Not because I look different. I mean, I do, but that's not it. I didn't recognize the life in her eyes. She actually believed she was starting something. Now I look in the mirror and see someone performing the role of Victoria Ashford, Michael's wife, and I can't remember who I was before I took the part. The saxophone had shifted to In a Sentimental Mood, and Ryan felt the weight of her confession settle over their table. What are you going to do? I've already started. She pulled out her phone, navigated to a saved email, and showed it to Ryan. It was from a law firm specializing in high net worth divorces. The subject line read, Re-initial consultation, confidential. Ryan's heart rate spiked. Mrs. Ashford, Victoria, please. If we're doing this, if I'm really saying this out loud, call me Victoria. Victoria, if Michael finds out I drove you to meet with divorce lawyers, he won't. I took an Uber. I used my maiden name. I paid in cash for money I'd been saving for 2 years. She put the phone away. The lawyer says I have options, but it won't be easy. Michael will fight for every painting, every friend, every piece of the life he thinks he built for me. And he'll make sure everyone knows I'm ungrateful for throwing it all away. Are you sure? Ryan immediately regretted the question. I'm sorry, that came out wrong. I just mean, am I sure I want to blow up my life? Victoria's smile turned sad. No, I'm terrified. I wake up every morning in our 16,000 square foot house, and I think about my grandmother who cleaned houses for a living, and I feel like the most spoiled, ungrateful person alive. Women would kill for my problems. That's not fair to yourself, isn't it? She looked around the bar at the musicians pouring their hearts into songs that maybe 20 people were listening to. I have everything, a husband with wealth and power, security, a beautiful home, staff to handle every inconvenience, and I'm sitting here complaining to my husband's driver because I feel trapped. How privileged is that? Ryan leaned forward. My wife and I lived in a one-bedroom apartment. Some months we had to choose between paying the electric bill and buying groceries. We fought about money constantly. She worked 2 jobs while pregnant because my salary as a mechanic wasn't enough. And you know what? We were happy. Not because we had the perfect life, but because we chose each other every day. That choice meant something because it was ours. He paused, surprised by his own intensity. I'm not saying money doesn't matter. It does, especially when you don't have it. But having everything except the freedom to choose who you are, that's not privilege. That's a different kind of poverty. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. I met with the lawyer 2 weeks ago. She said I need to be prepared for Michael to use everything against me. My lack of income, my dependence on him, even my mental health. He'll paint me as unstable, ungrateful, possibly unfit. She asked if I was ready for that fight. What did you tell her? I told her I'd think about it. Victoria wiped at her eyes. And I've been thinking about it every second since. Lying next to him every night, sitting across from him at breakfast, attending his business dinners where I smile and nod and play the part. The whole time thinking, is this really my life? Is this all I get? Ryan understood that feeling more than he wanted to admit. After Sarah died, he'd built a life around Emma that was stable and safe, but utterly devoid of joy. Wake up, make breakfast, drop Emma at school, drive the Ashfords wherever they needed to go, pick up Emma, help with homework, make dinner, bedtime routine, collapse, repeat. He told himself it was enough because Emma needed him. But late at night, he'd lie awake and wonder if he was teaching his daughter that life was just something you endured rather than something you actually lived. Can I ask you something? Victoria said. When your wife died, how did you know you'd survive it? I didn't. Ryan's throat tightened. For about 6 months, I didn't think I would. Emma would ask when Mommy was coming home, and I'd have to explain again that Mommy wasn't coming back, and she'd cry, and I'd cry, and it felt impossible, like trying to breathe underwater. What changed? Emma's kindergarten teacher called me in for a conference. She was worried because Emma had stopped drawing, and Emma loved to draw. She'd fill notebooks with pictures of dinosaurs and princesses and our family. But after Sarah died, she just stopped. When I asked her why, she said, "Drawing makes me think about Mommy, and thinking about Mommy makes Daddy sad, so I don't draw anymore." Ryan had to pause, the memory still sharp after all this time. My 5-year-old daughter was trying to manage my grief. She'd amputated part of herself to make things easier for me. And I realized I had a choice. I could stay underwater and drown us both, or I could fight my way to the surface and teach her that life after loss was still worth living. "That's beautiful," Victoria whispered. "It's not, though, because I only half learned the lesson." Ryan surprised himself with his honesty. "I got us to the surface, but I never really started swimming. I just treaded water, made everything about safety and stability, and never risking anything that could hurt us again. And now Emma's 7, and she's starting to notice that Daddy doesn't have friends, doesn't laugh much, doesn't do anything except work and take care of her. What am I teaching her about what life can be?" They sat with that question while the band transitioned to a new song. Around them, other patrons talked and laughed. People on dates or catching up with friends, living lives that included more than just survival. "My attorney asked me what I want," Victoria said finally. "Not what I'm running from, but what I'm running toward." And I couldn't answer her. I've spent so long being what Michael needed me to be that I don't know what I actually want anymore. "When's the last time you painted?" 4 years, 7 months? She smiled sadly at her own precision, mirroring his earlier answer about Sarah's death. "We count the things we've lost, don't we?" "What would you paint if you could?" Victoria was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands like they belonged to someone else. "I used to paint women, not portraits exactly, more like emotional landscapes. The feeling of being seen but not recognized, the weight of being desired but not known, the exhaustion of being someone's fantasy instead of your own reality." She looked up. "Michael hated them, said they were too dark, too angry. He wanted me to paint something more uplifting." "So you stopped." "So I stopped." She exhaled slowly. "But I dream about them sometimes. Whole galleries full of canvases I'll never paint. Women drowning in silk and champagne. Women screaming in beautiful rooms. Women disappearing into their own reflections." Ryan felt something shift in the air between them, a recognition of parallel imprisonment. "I used to work on classic cars," he heard himself say. "Before Emma, before the accident, I had this 1967 Mustang I was restoring in my buddy's garage. Sarah used to tease me about spending more time with the car than with her. What happened to it? Sold it to pay for the funeral." The words came out flat, factual. "Couldn't afford the storage fees anyway. Told myself it was just a car, that it didn't matter. But sometimes I drive past classic car shows and I feel like I amputated part of myself too." Victoria reached across the table and touched his hand, just briefly, a gesture of understanding. "We're quite a pair, aren't we? The invisible driver and the invisible wife." "Former invisible wife," Ryan corrected, "if you go through with it." "If I go through with it," she repeated, testing the words. "God, even saying it out loud feels impossible. Do you know what he'll do when he finds out? Not violence. Michael's too controlled for that. But he'll systematically dismantle my credibility. He'll tell our friends I'm having a breakdown. He'll suggest I need psychiatric help. He'll make sure everyone knows that he gave me everything and I threw it away." "Will he be wrong?" Victoria pulled her hand back. "What?" "About you throwing it away. Everything you'll lose. The house, the lifestyle, the security. Are you ready for that?" "I don't know." Her voice cracked. "That's what terrifies me. What if I'm making a huge mistake? What if I leave and discover I'm exactly as empty and untalented and lost as he says I am? What if the only thing I'm actually good at is being Mrs. Michael Ashford?" Ryan thought about the past 3 years. how he'd convinced himself that being Emma's father and the Ashfords' driver was enough, that wanting more was selfish. Or what if you leave and discover you're everything you were before he made you forget? They talked for another hour, the conversation meandering through territory both profound and mundane. Victoria told him about the art school she'd attended in San Francisco, about her first gallery show that had sold out in 2 days, about the moment she'd met Michael at a friend's party and been dazzled by his confidence and vision. Ryan talked about meeting Sarah at a community college auto shop class, about their wedding in a friend's backyard with 40 people and a cake from Costco, about how Emma had her mother's stubbornness and her father's tendency to overthink everything. Neither of them mentioned the obvious complication, that they were crossing lines, that this conversation in a dimly lit jazz bar was exactly the kind of thing that could destroy Ryan's career and complicate Victoria's divorce. Instead, they existed in a bubble of temporary honesty, two people who'd spent so long making themselves small, finally allowing themselves to expand. "I should get you home," Ryan said finally, checking his watch. It was past midnight, Mrs. Chen would be asleep on his couch, and he'd have to wake her and apologize for running late. Victoria's face fell. "Back to the cage." "For tonight." Ryan signaled for the check. "But you have that lawyer's number. You have options." "Options aren't the same as courage." "No," Ryan agreed, "but they're a start." They drove back to Pacific Palisades in silence, but it felt different from the silence on the way to the bar. Less empty, more full. When Ryan pulled up to the service entrance of the Ashford mansion, Victoria didn't immediately get out. "Thank you," she said, "not just for tonight, but for not treating me like I'm crazy." "You're not crazy, you're trapped. There's a difference." She smiled sadly. "Michael will be awake. He'll want to know about the gallery event, who I talked to, who asked about him. I'll lie and smile and play the role, and part of me will die just a little more." "Or," Ryan said carefully, "you could tell him you're done playing. Just like that?" "Probably not just like that. Probably it'll be messy and complicated and terrifying." He thought about Emma, about the life he'd built around protecting her from pain, and how that protection had slowly become a prison for them both. "But I'm learning that the alternative, just existing without actually living, might be worse." Victoria gathered her purse and opened the door. Before she stepped out, she turned back. "Your daughter, Emma. She's lucky to have you." "I'm the lucky one," Ryan said automatically, but then he caught himself. "Actually, we're both lucky, because we have each other, and that means we're not alone in figuring out how to actually live instead of just survive." After Victoria disappeared through the service entrance, Ryan sat in the car for a long moment, his hand still on the steering wheel, his mind racing. He'd just spent 2 hours having the most honest conversation he'd had since Sarah died, with his employer's wife, in a situation that could cost him everything if anyone found out. His phone buzzed. "Mrs. Chen, Emma woke up asking for you. I told her you'd be home soon. She fell back asleep holding the dinosaur you got her." Ryan's chest constricted. That dinosaur, a cheap plastic brachiosaurus from Target, had been Emma's comfort object since Sarah died. The reminder of what he had to lose made his earlier words to Victoria feel reckless, even dangerous. But as he drove home through the empty Los Angeles streets, past the homeless encampments under the overpasses and the luxury apartments towering above them, past the 24-hour diners and the closed storefronts and the ever-present lights of a city that never truly slept, Ryan couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted. For 3 years, he'd been sleepwalking through life, telling himself that safety was enough, that survival was sufficient, that asking for more than not drowning was selfish. Tonight, talking to a woman trapped in a gilded cage, he'd heard his own voice echoing back at him. And for the first time since Sarah's death, he allowed himself to wonder, what would it actually take to start swimming? He didn't have an answer, but as he pulled into his apartment complex at 1 a.m., exhausted and confused and strangely awake, Ryan Cole made a decision. Tomorrow he would pick up Emma from school himself instead of having Mrs. Chen do it. They would go to the park, and he would ask her about her day, really listen to her answers, maybe even push her on the swings and not worry about checking his work phone every 30 seconds. It was a small thing, laughably small, but it was a choice, his choice, and that had to count for something. Inside apartment 2C, Mrs. Chen was indeed asleep on his threadbare couch, the television playing some infomercial on mute. Ryan gently woke her, apologized for the late hour, paid her $50 he couldn't really afford, and walked her to her door. Then he checked on Emma, who was sprawled across her twin bed, the Brachiosaurus clutched in one hand, her favorite dinosaur book open beside her pillow. Ryan stood in the doorway watching his daughter breathe, feeling the familiar mix of overwhelming love and crushing responsibility. Emma stirred, her eyes fluttering open. "Daddy?" "Hey, Pumpkin, go back to sleep." "Did you have a good night at work?" It was such a simple question, such a routine question. Emma asked it almost every night he came home late. Usually Ryan gave her a simple answer. "Yes, honey, now sleep." But tonight, with Victoria's voice still echoing in his head and his own words about teaching Emma what life could be, he paused. "Actually, I had an interesting night. I helped someone who was feeling lost." Emma's drowsy eyes focused slightly. "Like when you helped me find my shoes." Ryan smiled despite himself. "Kind of like that, yeah." "You're good at helping people, Daddy." "Thanks, Em. You're pretty good at it, too." "How am I good at helping people?" "I'm just a kid." Ryan sat on the edge of her bed, smoothing back her dark hair, so much like Sarah's. "You help me remember what's important. You help me remember to laugh. You help me remember that being sad about missing Mommy is okay, but being happy about being alive is okay too." Emma processed this with the solemn concentration of a 7-year-old encountering something profound. "Do you think Mommy would want us to be happy?" "I know she would." "Then maybe we should try harder." Out of the mouths of babes. Ryan kissed his daughter's forehead. "Yeah, Pumpkin. Maybe we should." As Emma drifted back to sleep, Ryan moved to his own room, barely big enough for a bed and dresser, the walls thin enough that he could hear the couple next door arguing about money. He lay down fully clothed, staring at the water-stained ceiling, replaying the entire night. He'd crossed a line tonight. Not the line people might assume. Nothing romantic or inappropriate had happened with Victoria. But he'd crossed the line from passenger to participant in his own life. He'd made a choice based on something other than fear. He'd risked something, even if just a little, to do what felt right instead of what felt safe. And the world hadn't ended. His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Thank you for tonight, for listening, for seeing me. V." Ryan stared at the message for a long time before typing back, "Thank you for reminding me that I'm still capable of seeing. Drive safe. R." He deleted the message thread immediately, not out of guilt, but out of practicality. If anyone ever checked his phone, he needed plausible deniability. But he couldn't delete the feeling that had taken root somewhere in his chest, a tiny seed of something that felt dangerously like hope. Ryan Cole fell asleep that night with his hand over his heart, feeling that seed pulse like a second heartbeat, terrified of what might happen if he let it grow, more terrified of what would happen if he didn't. Outside his window, Los Angeles stretched out in all directions, millions of people, millions of stories, millions of choices being made in the space between what we fear and who we might become. And somewhere across the city, in a 16,000-square-foot mansion, Victoria Ashford lay awake beside her sleeping husband, her phone hidden under her pillow, a divorce lawyer's number saved in her contacts, and a question burning in her mind. What if Ryan was right? What if she wasn't weak, just trapped? What if the cage had a door she'd simply been too afraid to look for? The night offered no answers, but it offered something possibly more valuable, the space to ask the questions. And sometimes that's where change begins. Not with certainty, but with the courage to admit uncertainty. Not with knowing where you're going, but with being honest about where you are. Both Ryan and Victoria fell asleep that night not knowing what came next, not knowing if they'd have the strength to choose differently when morning came, not knowing if anything would actually change. But they fell asleep having been seen, really seen, perhaps for the first time in years. And that at least was something. That was a start. The morning after came with the harsh persistence of Los Angeles sunlight through cheap blinds. Ryan woke with his phone alarm screaming at 6:30 a.m., his body protesting every movement. 4 hours of sleep wasn't enough, but it never was these days. He stumbled through his morning routine on autopilot, shower, shave, coffee that tasted like burnt regret, before heading to Emma's room. She was already awake, sitting cross-legged on her bed with her dinosaur book open, lips moving silently as she practiced reading. The sight made his heart contract. When had she learned to wake herself up? When had she stopped needing him for this? "Morning, Pumpkin. You're up early." Emma looked up, her gap-toothed smile transforming her face. "Mrs. Chen says early birds get worms, but I don't want worms. Can we have pancakes?" Ryan checked his watch. He had to have the car detailed and gassed by 8 to pick up Michael Ashford for a breakfast meeting downtown. "How about I make you some before school? The good ones with chocolate chips?" "Really?" Emma's eyes went wide. Usually, morning meals were cereal or toast, eaten quickly while Ryan checked his work schedule. "Really? Go wash up." As Emma scrambled toward the bathroom, Ryan's phone buzzed. A text from Michael Ashford. "Change of plans. Need you at the house by 7:30. Important." Ryan's stomach dropped. 7:30 meant no time for pancakes, barely time to get Emma to Mrs. Chen's. More importantly, it meant something had shifted in the Ashford household, and the timing, less than 8 hours after he'd driven Victoria to a jazz bar instead of straight home, felt ominous. He texted back a simple confirmation, then called out to Emma. "Change of plans, sweetheart. I have to go in early, but I promise pancakes this weekend. The big breakfast, just you and me." Emma appeared in the doorway, toothbrush hanging from her mouth, disappointment written across her face. "You always promise." The words hit him like a physical blow because they were true. How many times had he promised her things? Trips to the zoo, movie nights, lazy Saturdays, only to cancel when work demanded it? He was teaching her that promises meant nothing, that she came second, that this was just how life worked. "You're right," Ryan said, kneeling to her level. "I do always promise, and I'm going to do better. I mean it this time." "That's what you said last time." Ryan had no good answer for that, so he just hugged her, feeling the small solidness of her body against his chest, breathing in the strawberry scent of her shampoo. "I love you, Em, more than anything in the world." "I know, Daddy." Her voice was muffled against his shoulder. "I just wish more than anything meant more time." 20 minutes later, Ryan was navigating morning traffic toward Pacific Palisades, Emma safely deposited with Mrs. Chen, his mind racing through worst-case scenarios. Did Michael know about last night? Had someone seen them at the bar? Had Victoria confessed something in a moment of guilt or courage? The Ashford mansion looked the same as always, imposing, immaculate, the kind of wealth that didn't announce itself because it didn't need to. Ryan pulled around to the service entrance, his hands slightly damp on the steering wheel. Michael Ashford was waiting in the garage, which was unusual. Normally, Ryan had to come inside, wait in the kitchen while Michael finished breakfast or took a call. But today, Michael stood beside his Tesla, dressed in his usual armor of expensive casual wear, designer jeans that cost more than Ryan's monthly rent, a polo shirt that probably had its own trust fund. "Ryan, thanks for coming early." Michael's smile was practiced, the kind that showed teeth but not warmth. "I need to discuss something sensitive." "Here it comes," Ryan thought. "Of course, Mr. Ashford, whatever you need." "It's about Victoria." Michael gestured for Ryan to follow him away from the house, toward the far end of the garage where 3 other luxury vehicles sat like sleeping beasts. "I'm concerned about her." Ryan's mouth went dry. "Concerned how, sir?" "She's been different lately, distant. Last night she came home from the gallery event and went straight to the guest room. Said she had a headache, didn't want to talk." Michael's forehead creased with what might have been genuine worry or practiced performance. Ryan couldn't tell. "Did she seem all right to you? During the drive?" This was a test. Ryan knew it with absolute certainty. The question was what kind of test and what answer would keep him employed. "She seemed tired, sir. The event ran late. We didn't talk much." "You drove her straight home?" The lie formed easily, smoothly, the product of 3 years of making himself invisible. "Yes, sir. Straight home." Michael studied him for a long moment, and Ryan felt like a specimen under a microscope. Then the tech billionaire nodded slowly. "I appreciate your discretion, Ryan. Victoria values her privacy, and I value employees who understand boundaries." "Of course, Mr. Ashford." "The thing is," Michael continued, his tone shifting to something more calculated, Victoria's been through some difficult periods. Depression, anxiety. There was a time before we married when she struggled significantly with her mental health. I've always tried to protect her from stress, from situations that might trigger those old patterns. Ryan said nothing, recognizing the narrative being constructed. If Victoria tried to leave, Michael was already laying the groundwork. Unstable wife, concerned husband, a woman who couldn't be trusted with her own decisions. I need you to let me know if you notice anything concerning, Michael said. If she asks you to take her anywhere unusual, if she seems upset or erratic, I'm not asking you to spy, just to be aware, for her own well-being. The request was dressed up in concern, but Ryan heard it for what it was, a command to monitor Victoria, to report back, to be Michael's eyes and ears. And the implied threat was clear. If Ryan didn't comply, there would be consequences. I understand, Mr. Ashford. Good. Michael's smile returned, warm and empty. Now, I need you to drive me to a breakfast meeting at Shutters. Then you're free until this afternoon. I have back-to-back video calls. Maybe spend some time with that daughter of yours. Emma, right? The mention of Emma's name felt like a warning shot, a reminder that Michael Ashford knew things about Ryan's life, had power over Ryan's ability to provide for his child. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. During the drive to Santa Monica, Michael was absorbed in his phone, firing off texts and emails with the single-minded focus of someone who'd turned communication into an art form. Ryan drove in silence, his mind replaying the conversation, feeling the trap tighten around him. He was being positioned as Michael's ally in controlling Victoria, and if he refused, if he showed even a hint of loyalty to her instead, he'd lose everything. The job, the salary, the health insurance that covered Emma's checkups, and the asthma medication she needed. Single fathers with high school educations and no references didn't exactly have employers lining up. But if he complied, if he became Michael's informant, he'd be helping to keep Victoria trapped. He'd be the mechanism of her cage. After dropping Michael at the restaurant, Ryan found himself driving aimlessly, not ready to go home to his empty apartment. His phone rang. Mrs. Chen. Ryan, I'm sorry to bother you, but Emma's school just called. She's in the nurse's office, says her stomach hurts. Ryan's heart lurched. Is she okay? Does she need to go to the hospital? The nurse thinks she's fine physically, but she's asking for you. 20 minutes later, Ryan walked into the elementary school nurse's office to find Emma sitting on the examination table, looking small and miserable, her dinosaur somehow procured from home clutched against her chest. Hey, Pumpkin, what's going on? Emma's face crumpled. My stomach hurts. The nurse, a kind-looking woman in her 50s, gave Ryan a meaningful look. I think she's fine medically, but she's been pretty upset. Ryan sat beside his daughter, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. Em, what's really wrong? I miss you, Emma whispered. You're always gone, and when you're home, you're tired, and I just wanted to see you. The nurse quietly excused herself, giving them privacy. Ryan held his daughter, feeling the full weight of his choices pressing down. He'd been so focused on providing for Emma, on keeping a roof over their heads and food in the fridge, that he'd forgotten she needed more than survival. She needed a father who was actually present. I'm sorry, he said quietly. You're right. I have been gone too much. Is it because of me? Because I'm expensive? Ryan pulled back to look at her face. What? No, Emma, why would you think that? I heard you on the phone with the insurance company about my medicine. You said it cost too much. How much had his 7-year-old daughter been carrying, worrying about being a burden? Em, listen to me. You are not expensive. You are the most important thing in my life. If I work a lot, it's because I want to give you everything you need, not because you're a problem. Never because you're a problem. But I don't need everything. I just need you. Out of the mouths of babes, Ryan thought for the second time in 12 hours. His daughter had just articulated what he'd been too afraid to admit, that all his striving for security and stability meant nothing if he wasn't actually there. What if we made a deal? Ryan said slowly, an idea forming. What if I promised to pick you up from school myself twice a week? And we do something together, just the two of us. No work phone, no distractions. Emma's eyes brightened slightly. Really? Really? And if I break that promise, you get to pick the consequence, within reason, he added hastily, knowing Emma's creativity. Can we go to the Natural History Museum? They have a new dinosaur exhibit. Absolutely. In fact, what are you doing right now? Emma blinked. I'm supposed to go back to class. What if we didn't? What if I signed you out and we went right now? But don't you have work? Ryan thought about Michael Ashford sitting in his breakfast meeting, about Victoria trapped in her mansion, about the choice he'd encouraged her to make while being too afraid to make his own. I have the afternoon off, and I can't think of anywhere I'd rather be than looking at dinosaurs with you. The smile that broke across Emma's face was like sunrise. Really, Daddy? You mean it? I mean it. They spent the next 4 hours at the Natural History Museum, and Ryan couldn't remember the last time he'd felt this present. Emma dragged him from exhibit to exhibit, reading every placard aloud, asking questions he couldn't answer, her excitement infectious. They ate overpriced chicken nuggets in the museum café, and Emma told him about her classmates and her teacher and the book she was reading, and Ryan listened, really listened, instead of thinking about his phone or his schedule or the 1,000 worries that usually occupied his mind. Daddy, are you happy? Emma asked suddenly, dipping a French fry in ketchup. What kind of question is that? Mrs. Chen says grown-ups forget to be happy. She says they get so busy working and worrying that they forget life is supposed to be good sometimes. Mrs. Chen is pretty smart. So are you happy? Ryan considered lying, giving her the easy answer, but after last night's conversation with Victoria about disappearing while still alive, after this morning's realization that he'd been teaching Emma to accept scraps instead of meals, he found himself choosing honesty. I'm happy right now, being here with you. But you're right that I forget sometimes. I get so focused on making sure we're safe and okay that I forget to actually enjoy the good parts. Like dinosaurs? Like dinosaurs, Ryan agreed, smiling. And you. I definitely forget to enjoy you enough. That's silly. I'm very enjoyable. You absolutely are. They were standing in front of a massive Tyrannosaurus Rex skeleton when Ryan's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, Victoria. Can we talk? Not about last night. Something's happened. Ryan's good mood evaporated. He glanced at Emma, who was absorbed in reading about the T-Rex's hunting patterns, then stepped away to respond. Everything okay? The reply came quickly. Michael asked me to see a psychiatrist. Says he's worried about me. I think he knows something. Ryan's blood ran cold. When? This morning, right after you left, he was different, watching me. Please, I need to talk to someone who won't think I'm crazy. Ryan looked at his daughter, at the life he was finally starting to actually live instead of just survive, and felt the trap closing. If he helped Victoria, he risked everything. But if he didn't, he became exactly what Michael wanted, another instrument of control. Tonight, after Emma's asleep. Same place? Thank you. Ryan pocketed his phone and returned to Emma, who was now lying on the floor to look up at the T-Rex from below. Daddy, do you think dinosaurs knew they were going to go extinct? I don't think so, Pumpkin. Why? Because if they knew, maybe they would have tried harder to not die. Ryan sat beside her on the museum floor, not caring about the looks from other parents, and stared up at the ancient bones. Maybe. Or maybe they just lived the best they could until they couldn't anymore. That's sad. Yeah, Ryan agreed. It is. That evening, after dinner and homework and the bedtime routine, after Mrs. Chen arrived and Emma fell asleep clutching her Brachiosaurus, Ryan drove back to the Blue Note. Victoria was already there, sitting in the same corner booth, looking like she hadn't slept. She'd dressed down, jeans and a simple sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders. It was the most normal he'd ever seen her look. He knows, she said without preamble when Ryan slid into the booth. Or suspects. He didn't accuse me of anything, but he scheduled this appointment with a psychiatrist who specializes in depression and anxiety. Says he's worried I'm relapsing. Relapsing from what? 5 years ago, before we got married, I went through a difficult period. My father had just died. I was struggling financially, trying to make it as an artist. I was depressed, probably legitimately. I saw a therapist, got on medication for a while. Victoria's hand shook around her coffee cup. Michael knows this. He was supportive then, but now he's weaponizing it. If I try to leave, he'll say I'm mentally unstable. He'll use my own history against me. Ryan thought about Michael's conversation with him that morning, the careful way he'd constructed the narrative. He asked me to monitor you, to report back if you seemed upset or asked to go anywhere unusual. Victoria's face went pale. What did you say? I said I understood. What else could I say? Ryan leaned forward. Victoria, I have a 7-year-old daughter who needs health insurance and a father who can pay rent. If I lose this job, I lose everything. I can't afford to be your ally. I know. I'm not asking you to, but I'm going to be anyway, Ryan continued, surprising himself, because this morning my daughter faked sick to get my attention, because she asked me if I was happy and I couldn't give her an honest yes, because I've spent 3 years telling myself that survival was enough, and last night talking to you, I realized I've been lying to both of us. Ryan, you could lose your job. I'm already losing something more important. He thought about Emma at the museum, her question about dinosaurs knowing they were going to go extinct. I'm losing the ability to look my daughter in the eye and tell her that standing up for what's right matters, that choosing courage over comfort is worth it. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. I met with the lawyer again today. She said if Michael pursues the mental health angle, I could lose everything. Not just money. He could argue I'm unfit, unreliable. She asked if I was absolutely certain I wanted to proceed, knowing what's at stake. What did you tell her? I told her I'd think about it. Victoria wiped at her eyes. And then I came home and stood in the closet full of clothes I never chose, looking at the life I never wanted, and I thought, is this really all I get? Is this really the best I deserve? What's the alternative? That's just it. I don't know. The lawyer says I'll probably have to go back to waitressing, maybe get a studio apartment in a bad neighborhood, start over from nothing at 33. I'll lose my friends because they're really Michael's friends. I'll lose the life I've built, even if that life is a cage. Ryan thought about his own small apartment, about the struggles he and Sarah had faced, about the very real difference money made. I won't lie to you and say money doesn't matter. It does. Poverty is hard and humiliating and exhausting. But you know what's worse? Being rich and hollow, having everything except yourself. How do you know which is worse? Have you ever been rich? No, but I've been hollow. Ryan met her eyes. After Sarah died, I built this perfect little survival machine. Emma and I had our routines, our schedules, our safe little life. We weren't thriving, but we weren't drowning either. And I told myself that was enough, that asking for more was ungrateful. What changed? You did. Last night, listening to you talk about disappearing while still alive, I heard my own story. And this morning, my daughter looked at me with these big sad eyes and said, I just need you. And I realized I've been giving her everything except what she actually wants, a father who's actually alive, not just going through the motions. Victoria was quiet for a long moment, watching the jazz quartet set up on the small stage. Finally, she said, I started painting again. What? This afternoon, after the lawyer, after Michael left for his office. I went to an art supply store, paid cash so there'd be no record on our credit card, and bought basic supplies, just canvas and acrylics and brushes. Then I locked myself in the guest bathroom and painted for 3 hours. What did you paint? Victoria pulled out her phone, showed him a photo. It was raw and angry and beautiful. A woman's silhouette drowning in fabric that might have been silk or water, her face obscured, her hands reaching for something just out of frame. It's incredible, Ryan said honestly. It's terrible. My technique is rusty, my color theory is off. I couldn't remember half of what I used to know. But Victoria was smiling as she said it, really smiling, in a way Ryan had never seen. And it was the most alive I've felt in 5 years. Then you have your answer. Do I? Because painting in a bathroom for 3 hours doesn't pay rent, doesn't buy food, doesn't build a life. No, Ryan agreed, but neither does slowly dying in a mansion. At least poverty with purpose gives you a chance at something real. Is that what you tell yourself? When you're choosing between paying the electric bill and buying your daughter new shoes? The question was sharp, challenging, and Ryan appreciated her honesty. No. When I'm making those choices, I tell myself I'm a failure, that Sarah deserved better, that Emma deserves better, that if I'd just worked harder or been smarter or made different choices, we wouldn't be struggling. Then how can you tell me to choose struggle? Because I'm starting to realize there's a difference between struggling towards something and struggling to stay numb. Ryan paused, trying to articulate something he'd only begun to understand himself. When Sarah was alive and we were broke, it was hard, really hard, but we were building something together. We had hope even if we had nothing else. After she died, I still had nothing, but I lost the hope too. I wasn't struggling toward anything. I was just enduring. And now? Now I'm trying to remember what hope feels like, trying to teach Emma that life is something you engage with, not just something you survive. He gestured at her phone, at the painting. You painted today. For the first time in almost 5 years, you painted. That's not nothing. Victoria looked at the image on her phone like she couldn't quite believe she'd created it. Michael came home while I was cleaning up. I'd hidden everything, but I must have had paint in my hair or something because he looked at me and said, "You seem different." And I panicked. I thought he knew, but then he said, "The medication the psychiatrist prescribed must be working already." And I realized he'd rather believe I'm medicated and compliant than healthy and choosing. What did you say? Nothing. I just smiled and nodded and played the role. Victoria's jaw tightened. But inside I was screaming, because he was right there, standing 2 feet away, and he couldn't see me. After 7 years together, he looked right at me and saw a problem he'd solved, not a person. Ryan understood that feeling, the invisibility that came from being reduced to a function. Driver, employee, single dad. All the roles that defined him, none of them capturing who he actually was underneath. "I need to tell you something," Ryan said. "This morning, Michael basically ordered me to spy on you, to report back if you seem unstable or ask to go anywhere unusual. Will you?" "No, but he's going to notice eventually, and when he does, I'll lose my job." "Then don't help me," Victoria said urgently. "Seriously, Ryan, you have a daughter to support. You can't afford to be noble." "I can't afford not to be." Ryan thought about Emma asking if he was happy, about her fake stomach ache that was really a cry for attention, about teaching her what mattered. What kind of father would I be if I taught my daughter that you protect yourself by helping to trap other people? That you stay safe by collaborating with bullies? A smart one, a practical one. Maybe, but not one I'd respect when I looked in the mirror. They sat in silence as the jazz quartet started their first set, a slow, mournful version of Autumn Leaves that seemed to match the mood. Around them, other patrons settled into their evenings, couples leaning close over wine, solo drinkers nursing their thoughts, everyone seeking temporary refuge in the music and dim lighting. "I have a plan," Victoria said suddenly. "The lawyer helped me work it out. I've been slowly moving money into an account Michael doesn't know about. Nothing obvious, just cash back from grocery shopping, selling some jewelry he never notices, little bits here and there. I've saved almost $15,000 over 2 years. That's not much in Los Angeles. I know, but it's enough for first and last month's rent somewhere cheap, enough for art supplies and groceries while I find work. The lawyer says if I'm strategic about the divorce filing, if I have my own place and my own income, even if it's small, Michael can't claim I'm dependent and unstable." "When?" "I don't know. Soon, maybe. The longer I wait, the more entrenched he becomes in this narrative of me being unwell." Victoria's hands trembled. "But I'm terrified. What if I leave and discover I can't make it? What if I'm not strong enough or talented enough? What if he's right, and I really do need him?" Ryan thought about the painting on her phone, about the life in her voice when she described those 3 hours locked in a bathroom, creating something. "You're strong enough. You're just out of practice at believing it." "How do you know?" "Because you're here. Because you hired a lawyer and saved money and started painting again, all while pretending to be the perfect compliant wife. That takes more strength than you're giving yourself credit for." Victoria's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and her face went tight. "Michael, asking where I am. I told him I had a headache and was going to bed early, but he's home now and I'm not there." "What are you going to tell him?" that I went for a drive to clear my head, that I'm on my way home. She stood, gathering her purse. Thank you, Ryan, for listening, for not making me feel crazy. You're not crazy, you're waking up. There's a difference. As Victoria turned to leave, she paused. That thing you said about teaching Emma what matters, you're doing that, even if it costs you. Maybe especially if it costs you. After she left, Ryan sat alone in the booth, nursing his cold coffee and watching the musicians play. He should go home, relieve Mrs. Chen, check on Emma, but he needed a few minutes to sit with what he'd just committed to, helping Victoria, even though it could destroy him financially. His phone buzzed. A text from Michael Ashford. Need you at the house early tomorrow, 7 a.m. Important meeting. Another test, Ryan thought. Another chance for Michael to gauge his loyalty, to position him as an ally in controlling Victoria. And Ryan would have to show up, would have to play the role, all while knowing he'd already chosen his side. The drive home took him past Bunker Hill, where the skyscrapers housed the offices of men like Michael Ashford, powerful, successful, utterly in control of their worlds. Then down through neighborhoods that got progressively less wealthy, where people like Ryan lived in buildings that needed repairs and drove cars that needed prayer. But somewhere in between those extremes, Ryan thought, there had to be a middle ground, a place where you had enough without selling yourself, where you could be safe without being numb, where you taught your daughter that integrity mattered even when it was expensive. He just had to find it, and help Victoria find it too. When Ryan got home, Mrs. Chen was watching a Korean drama with the subtitles on, a cup of tea going cold on his coffee table. She's sleeping good tonight, Mrs. Chen reported. We worked on her dinosaur project for school. She's very smart, your Emma. Thank you for staying late again. I'm sorry I keep... Mrs. Chen waved him off. You're a good father, Ryan, working hard for your daughter. Sarah would be proud. After Mrs. Chen left, Ryan checked on Emma, fast asleep, dinosaur project papers scattered on the floor beside her bed, the Brachiosaurus tucked under one arm. He gathered the papers carefully, saw she'd drawn a picture of him and her at the museum, labeled Best Day with Daddy, in her careful handwriting. Ryan sat on the edge of her bed, holding that drawing, feeling his heart crack open. This was what mattered. Not the job, not the security, not the careful preservation of status quo. This. His daughter believing that spending time together was the best thing in the world. Her knowing she was worth more than the scraps of attention he'd been giving her. He made a decision right there, sitting in Emma's cramped bedroom in their rundown apartment. Whatever happened with Michael and Victoria, whatever consequences came, he was going to start living like his daughter was watching. Because she was. And he was teaching her what to accept, what to fight for, what to value. Tomorrow he'd show up at the Ashford mansion. He'd drive Michael wherever he needed to go. He'd be professional and competent and reliable. But he wouldn't betray Victoria. Wouldn't help Michael tighten the cage. And when the reckoning came, when Michael figured out that Ryan had chosen integrity over employment, Ryan would face it knowing he'd made the right choice. Not the safe choice, not the smart choice, but the right one. That had to count for something. Ryan arrived at the Ashford mansion at 6:55 a.m. the next morning, 5 minutes early as always, his stomach tight with anticipation. The pre-dawn light painted the Pacific Palisades in shades of gray and gold, and the air carried that peculiar Los Angeles mixture of ocean salt and car exhaust. He'd left Emma still sleeping, Mrs. Chen already installed on his couch with her knitting and her Korean dramas queued up. Michael was waiting in his home office, a glass-walled room that overlooked the infinity pool and the city beyond. He didn't look up when Ryan entered, just gestured to one of the leather chairs across from his desk. The power play was obvious. Make Ryan wait, establish the hierarchy, remind him who controlled the room. Ryan sat and waited, hands folded in his lap, expression neutral. He'd learned this skill over 3 years of employment, how to be present without being intrusive. Attentive without being presumptuous. How to disappear while remaining visible. Finally, Michael set down his phone and looked at Ryan with eyes that were calculating and cold, despite the practiced warmth of his smile. I appreciate your punctuality, Ryan. It's a quality I value. Thank you, sir. I wanted to talk to you about Victoria. Michael leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers in a gesture Ryan had seen him use in business meetings, the pose of someone preparing to negotiate. You've been driving her for how long now? 18 months, sir. And in that time, have you noticed anything concerning? Changes in her behavior, her mood, her stability? There it was, the real question wrapped in layers of false concern. Ryan kept his expression blank, his voice steady. Mrs. Ashford has always been professional and courteous, sir. I haven't noticed anything concerning. Not even the other night, when you drove her home from the gallery? Ryan's pulse quickened, but he maintained his composure. She seemed tired, sir. As I mentioned yesterday, Michael's eyes narrowed slightly. Ryan, I'm going to be direct with you. Victoria is going through something. I'm not sure what yet. Perhaps a depressive episode, perhaps something else. But I need people around her who I can trust to have her best interests at heart. People who understand that sometimes protecting someone means being honest about what you observe, even if it feels uncomfortable. The manipulation was masterful. Michael wasn't asking Ryan to spy. He was inviting him to be a trusted ally in protecting Victoria from herself. The framing transformed betrayal into loyalty, surveillance into care. I understand, sir. Do you? Michael leaned forward, his intensity ratcheting up. Because Victoria's health is my primary concern. She's fragile in ways that aren't immediately obvious. Before we married, she struggled significantly. Self-destructive patterns, poor judgment, an inability to distinguish between what she wanted and what was actually good for her. Ryan thought about the painting Victoria had shown him, about the life in her voice when she talked about creating again. She seems to have a good handle on things now, sir. That's because I've provided structure, stability, a life where she doesn't have to make the kind of decisions that overwhelm her. Michael's tone carried absolute certainty. But lately I've sensed her pulling away from that support system, and that concerns me deeply. What would you like me to do, sir? Just be observant. If she asks you to take her somewhere unusual, or if she seems agitated or makes concerning statements, I need to know, not to punish her, never that, but to ensure she gets the help she needs before she makes decisions she'll regret. The trap was elegant. If Ryan reported back, he became complicit in Victoria's imprisonment. If he didn't, and Michael discovered his silence, Ryan would be fired for disloyalty. Either way, Michael maintained control. I understand, sir, Ryan repeated, giving Michael exactly nothing. Good. Michael's smile returned, warm and meaningless. Now, I need you to drive me to a meeting in Century City. We can discuss your performance review on the way. I've been very pleased with your work, and I think a raise might be in order. The carrot after the stick. Ryan recognized the pattern because he'd seen Michael use it in business negotiations, establish dominance, then offer rewards for compliance. The raise would be significant enough to make Ryan dependent, to raise the stakes of potential loss. During the drive to Century City, Michael talked about Emma, how old she was now, whether she was doing well in school, if Ryan had started thinking about her future education. Each question felt like a reminder of what Ryan stood to lose, a subtle catalog of vulnerabilities Michael could exploit if necessary. Single parenting must be challenging, Michael said as they merged onto the 405. The financial pressure alone. Have you thought about what happens if she needs braces or wants to go to college someday? Every day, sir. I admire that. A man who puts his child first, who makes sacrifices for her well-being. Michael paused meaningfully. That's the kind of loyalty and dedication I value. The kind I try to cultivate in the people around me. Ryan understood the subtext perfectly. Loyalty to Michael would ensure Emma's future. Disloyalty would jeopardize it. After dropping Michael at his meeting, Ryan sat in the car for a long moment, hands gripping the steering wheel, breathing slowly. The raise Michael had mentioned would be substantial, enough to move Emma and him to a better neighborhood, to stop worrying about every unexpected expense, to actually save something for her future. All he had to do was report back on Victoria's movements, help Michael maintain the narrative of her instability. All he had to do was collaborate in her imprisonment. His phone buzzed. Victoria, from yet another unknown number. Can you talk? Not in person. Too risky, but I need advice. Ryan called her from a secure location, a Starbucks parking lot in Westwood, where no one knew him or cared what he was doing. Victoria answered on the first ring, her voice tight with stress. He's escalating, she said without preamble. He scheduled the psychiatrist appointment for tomorrow. Says it's just a precaution, but I know what he's doing. He's building a case that I'm unstable. Did you tell the lawyer? She says it's actually good. If I go, act normal, the psychiatrist will see I'm fine and Michael won't have ammunition. If I refuse to go, it makes me look paranoid and feeds his narrative. Victoria's laugh was bitter. Either way, I'm trapped. Go and perform sanity for a doctor who's probably already been briefed by Michael. Don't go and prove I'm erratic. Ryan thought about Michael's careful construction that morning, the way he'd framed concern as care. He's smart. I'll give him that. He's brilliant. That's the problem. Victoria's voice cracked slightly. Ryan, what if he's right? What if I am unstable? What if wanting to leave a life of luxury and security for uncertainty and struggle is actually crazy? Is painting again crazy? I don't know, maybe. I locked myself in the guest bathroom again last night, painted until 3 in the morning. Michael knocked once, asked if I was all right, and I told him I was reading. He said, don't stay up too late, and went to bed. Like I was a child needing permission to manage my own sleep schedule. What did you paint? Cages, different kinds, gilded ones, beautiful ones, ones that look like mansions and marriages and lives that everyone envies. Her voice softened. And doors. Always doors. Some locked, some open, some that might be either depending on whether you have the courage to try them. Ryan closed his eyes, seeing the images she described. That doesn't sound crazy to me. That sounds like someone finding their way to the truth. Or someone having a breakdown. Victoria, listen to me. I just spent an hour watching Michael position himself as your concerned protector. He's good. He almost had me believing that reporting on you would be the caring thing to do. But you know what gave him away? What? He never once asked what you wanted, not what would make you happy, not what you needed, not what your goals were. Every single question was about your stability, your judgment, your ability to make appropriate decisions. And the assumption underlying all of it was that your desires can't be trusted. Silence on the line, then quietly, he's been doing that for 7 years. I know. Making me doubt myself. Making me think that wanting anything different from what he provides means something's wrong with me. Victoria's breathing had changed, anger replacing fear. And I believed him. That's the worst part. I actually believed that being grateful for the cage meant I didn't deserve freedom. What are you going to do? I'm going to the psychiatrist appointment tomorrow. I'm going to be calm and rational and perfectly sane. And then I'm going to come home and paint more doors. She paused. And I'm going to call the lawyer and tell her to draw up the divorce papers. I'm done performing. Ryan's chest tightened with a mixture of pride and terror. When? Soon, maybe next week. The lawyer wants everything in order first. The separate bank account fully funded, an apartment lease signed, proof of employment. Victoria laughed shakily. I applied to waitress at 3 restaurants yesterday, used my maiden name, didn't mention being married to Michael Ashford. 2 already called back for interviews. That's good. That's progress. Ryan, when I file, Michael's going to know you helped me, or at least suspect. He's going to fire you. I know. You don't have to do this. You can tell him about these calls. You can protect yourself and Emma. Ryan thought about his daughter's drawing, about the promise he'd made to pick her up from school twice a week, about teaching her what mattered. If I do that, what am I teaching Emma? That you save yourself by helping powerful people hurt vulnerable ones? That survival matters more than integrity? I'm not vulnerable. I'm a privileged woman with a mansion and a closet full of designer clothes complaining that my rich husband is mean to me. You're a woman trapped in a relationship where you've been systematically isolated from your identity, your autonomy, and your ability to make choices. That's abuse, Victoria. It doesn't stop being abuse just because it happens in a nice house. He heard her sharp intake of breath. I've never said that word out loud. What word? Abuse. Because he doesn't hit me. Because he buys me things. Because, on paper, he treats me well. Control is abuse. Isolation is abuse. Making you doubt your own sanity is abuse. Ryan's voice was firm. It doesn't require bruises to be real. Victoria was crying now, soft sounds that she tried to muffle. I feel so stupid. Like I should have seen it earlier, like I wasted 7 years. You're seeing it now. That's what matters. They talked for another 20 minutes, Victoria's voice growing stronger as she articulated her plan. The psychiatrist appointment tomorrow would establish her stability. The divorce papers would be filed next Friday, exactly 1 week away. She'd already found a studio apartment in Silver Lake near where her old art studio had been. 600 square feet for $1,800 a month. She'd signed the lease yesterday using her savings. I move in a week from Saturday, Victoria said. The morning after I serve him with papers. The lawyer says it's better if I'm already gone when he gets them, that it establishes I'm serious and prevents him from trying to talk me out of it. Where does he think you'll be that morning? Yoga class? I go every Saturday at 9, except that Saturday I'll be loading my car with everything I can't live without and driving away. Her voice wavered. I'm terrified, Ryan. Absolutely terrified. You're also brave. Those two things can exist together. After they hung up, Ryan sat in the Starbucks parking lot, watching people come and go with their morning coffee, their normal lives, their regular problems. He thought about calling Michael, telling him everything, collecting that raise and securing Emma's future. The temptation was real and strong and practical. Instead, he drove to Emma's school and signed her out early for the second time in 2 days. The school secretary gave him a concerned look. Was everything all right at home? And Ryan assured her it was. He just wanted to spend time with his daughter. Which was true, even if the underlying reason was that he needed to see her, to remember what he was fighting for. They went to the park near their apartment, one of those sad Los Angeles playgrounds with sun-faded equipment and patchy grass. Emma ran straight for the swings, demanding Ryan push her high enough to touch the sky. Be careful, Pumpkin. Not too high. You always say that, Daddy, but I want to go higher. Ryan pushed her, watching her legs pump back and forth, her hair flying, her laughter pure and unself-conscious. When had he become the kind of father who was always saying, be careful, instead of try it? When had he started teaching Emma that safety mattered more than joy? Daddy, catch me! Emma launched herself off the swing mid-arc, and Ryan's heart stopped as he rushed forward, catching her just before she hit the ground. She was laughing hysterically, adrenaline and delight mixing in her 7-year-old body. Emma, you can't just, that's dangerous. But you caught me. You always catch me. Her absolute faith in him was simultaneously beautiful and terrifying. They sat on a bench sharing a sleeve of Oreos Ryan bought from a vending machine, and Emma chattered about her day, about the dinosaur project, about how her friend Madison had moved away, and she was sad but also excited because the new girl, Zoe, liked dinosaurs too. Daddy, why do people leave? Emma asked suddenly. Ryan's chest constricted. What do you mean, sweetheart? Like Madison, and like Mommy. Why do people go away? Well, Madison left because her parents got new jobs. That's different from Mommy. But they both left. Emma's logic was childlike but sound. And now they're both gone. Ryan pulled her close, smelling the strawberry shampoo and playground dirt that defined childhood. Sometimes people leave because they have to, because staying would hurt them, or because they need something different. And sometimes, like with Mommy, they don't choose to leave. Life just happens in ways we can't control. Did Mommy want to leave us? No, baby, never. She loved us more than anything. Emma was quiet for a moment, processing. Then, if you had to leave me for something important, would you? The question hit him like a physical blow. Emma, I would never leave you. Never. But what if you had to? What if staying with me meant not helping someone who really needed help? Ryan pulled back to look at his daughter's face, wondering how she'd gotten so wise, so young. Why are you asking me this? Mrs. Chen says sometimes being good means doing hard things. She said her son moved to America and left her in Korea, and it was sad but also right because he needed to build his own life. Emma's eyes were serious. Is it like that? Sometimes leaving is actually staying, if you know what I mean. Ryan didn't know what he meant, but he suspected Emma was working out something profound in her 7-year-old way. I think sometimes taking care of people means letting them make their own choices, even if those choices are hard, even if you'd rather keep them safe. Like Mommy let you be a driver even though it means you're gone a lot? Kind of like that, yeah. Emma nodded sagely, apparently satisfied with this answer. Daddy, are you going to lose your job? The question came out of nowhere, casual and devastating. What makes you think that? You've been different, worried, and you keep taking me out of school, which you never do unless something's wrong. Emma looked at him with eyes that were far too knowing. Are we going to be okay? Ryan wanted to lie, to reassure her that everything was fine, that he had it all under control, but he'd promised himself he'd start being honest with her, start treating her like someone who could handle truth. I don't know, Em. Maybe not. I might lose my job soon because I'm trying to help someone who needs help. And that might mean things are tight for a while. Tighter than now? Yeah, maybe tighter than now. Emma considered this, swinging her legs from the bench. Will we still have our apartment? We'll have somewhere to live, I promise you that, even if we have to move somewhere smaller. Will I still go to my school? I'll do everything I can to make sure you do. Okay. Emma reached for another Oreo. Then I think you should help your friend. Because that's what good people do, right? They help even when it's hard. Ryan felt tears prick his eyes. His 7-year-old daughter was giving him permission to risk their security for someone else's freedom. The enormity of that trust was almost unbearable. You're pretty amazing, you know that? I know. Emma grinned her gap-toothed grin. I get it from you. That evening, after dropping Emma back at school for the last 2 hours of the day, she'd insisted, saying she couldn't miss art class, Ryan drove aimlessly through Los Angeles, processing everything. In 1 week, Victoria would file for divorce. In 1 week, his complicity in her escape would likely be discovered. In 1 week, everything he'd carefully built over the past 3 years could come crashing down. His phone rang. Michael Ashford. Ryan, I need you to pick up Victoria from her psychiatrist appointment tomorrow at 4. The office is in Beverly Hills. I'll text you the address. Of course, sir. And Ryan, pay attention to her demeanor afterward. The doctor will give me his assessment, but I'd value your observations as well. There it was again, the invitation to betray, wrapped in the language of care. I understand, sir. After he hung up, Ryan sat at a red light on Wilshire Boulevard, watching the crosswalk fill with people heading home from work, and he thought about the different kinds of traps people built for themselves. Michael's trap was control disguised as care. Victoria's had been accepting that disguise. Ryan's own trap was choosing safety over integrity, over and over, until he'd forgotten what integrity even felt like. But Emma had reminded him. His daughter, with her absolute faith that he would catch her when she jumped, her belief that helping people mattered more than being comfortable. She was 7 years old and already understood something Ryan had forgotten, that the point of safety was to make you strong enough to take risks for the things that mattered. The light turned green. Ryan drove toward Pacific Palisades, toward the Ashford mansion, toward a confrontation that was coming whether he was ready or not, because in 1 week, Victoria was filing for divorce. And when she did, Michael would look for someone to blame. He'd trace back through Victoria's movements, her conversations, her tiny acts of rebellion, and he'd land on Ryan, the driver who'd had access, opportunity, time alone with her. Ryan could run, could quit before he was fired, could claim he'd found better opportunities, could disappear before the reckoning came. But running would teach Emma the wrong lesson. Running would confirm Michael's worldview that loyalty was transactional, that everyone had a price, that caring about someone meant owning them. So Ryan wouldn't run. He'd show up tomorrow and drive Victoria home from her psychiatrist appointment. He'd observe her demeanor and report back to Michael that she seemed fine, seemed stable, seemed exactly like someone making rational choices about her own life. He'd lie through his teeth and dare Michael to prove otherwise. And when the consequences came, when Michael fired him or worse, Ryan would face them knowing he'd taught Emma something worth more than job security. He taught her that some people were worth fighting for, that some cages needed to be opened, even if it cost you everything to find the key. The next afternoon, Ryan waited in the parking lot of a medical building on Bedford Drive, watching the door Victoria would exit from. His stomach was tight with anticipation, wondering how the appointment had gone, whether the psychiatrist had seen through Michael's narrative or bought into it. At 4:07, Victoria emerged, and Ryan studied her carefully. She looked calm, composed, her expression neutral. She got into the car without a word, and Ryan drove in silence for several blocks before she spoke. He was nice, professional. Asked me about my mood, my sleep, whether I was experiencing anxiety or intrusive thoughts. Victoria's voice was flat, controlled. I told him I was fine, maybe a little stressed from social obligations, but overall content. He seemed satisfied. That's good. He asked if I'd ever considered leaving my marriage. Victoria's hands clenched in her lap. Michael must have briefed him. Otherwise, why would that question come up in a general psychiatric evaluation? What did you say? I said I sometimes felt overwhelmed by expectations, but that most marriages had challenges. She laughed bitterly. I played the role perfectly. Slightly anxious, but fundamentally stable. Grateful for my husband's concern. Willing to try medication if the doctor thought it would help. Did he prescribe anything? Low-dose anti-anxiety medication. Optional, he said. Just if I felt I needed support managing stress. Victoria turned to look at Ryan. It's brilliant, actually. If I take it, I'm confirming I need medical intervention. If I don't, I'm non-compliant with treatment. Either way, Michael builds his case that I'm unstable. Ryan understood the trap. What are you going to do? Fill the prescription. Take it once or twice so there's a record. Then stop. Victoria's jaw was set. 5 more days. That's all I need to get through. 5 more days of performing sanity, playing the role, pretending everything is fine. Then I file and leave. He's going to fight you. I know. The lawyer says I should prepare for him to freeze my credit cards immediately, cut off my access to their joint accounts, make it as difficult as possible for me to function while the divorce proceeds. Victoria's voice wavered. I'll go from a mansion to a studio apartment, from unlimited resources to counting pennies, from Mrs. Michael Ashford to Victoria Chen, waitress and failed artist. Not failed, starting over. Is there a difference? Ryan thought about the past 3 years, about rebuilding his life from the wreckage of Sarah's death. Yeah, failure is giving up. Starting over is choosing to try again, even when you're scared. They drove in silence through Beverly Hills, past the mansions and luxury cars, and people whose problems looked nothing like theirs. Ryan knew he should take Victoria straight home, should minimize the time they spent together, should protect himself from Michael's inevitable investigation. But instead, he found himself pulling over at a small park tucked between million-dollar houses. What are we doing? Victoria asked. I need to tell you something, and I need to say it now before I lose my nerve. Ryan turned to face her. When you file on Friday, Michael's going to figure out I helped you. Maybe not immediately, but eventually. He's too smart not to put the pieces together. I know. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Just listen. Ryan took a breath. When he fires me, and he will, I need you to not feel guilty. I need you to understand that I made this choice knowing the consequences, that I chose it because it was right, not because you manipulated me or seduced me or whatever story he'll tell. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. You're going to lose everything because of me. No, I'm going to lose a job. That's not everything. Ryan thought about Emma's question at the park, about what good people do even when it's hard. Everything is my daughter. Everything is being able to look her in the eye and know I stood for something. A job isn't everything. It's just money. Just money? Ryan, you have a daughter to support. Money is survival. Money is survival, but so is dignity. So is integrity. So is teaching Emma that some things matter more than security. Ryan's voice was firm. I've spent 3 years teaching her to play it safe, to be grateful for scraps, to never ask for more than the minimum. And you know what? She deserves better. She deserves to see her father take a stand for what's right, even when it costs him. Victoria reached across the console and grabbed his hand. Thank you for seeing me, for believing me, for not making me feel crazy. You're not crazy. You're waking up. Ryan squeezed her hand once, then released it. 5 more days. You can do this. 5 more days, Victoria repeated, like a mantra. Then I file. Then I leave. Then I start over. Then you start living. Ryan drove Victoria home, watching her walk into the mansion that was her prison, knowing that in 5 days she'd walk out for the last time. And when she did, when Michael discovered her betrayal and Ryan's complicity, everything would change. But as Ryan drove toward Emma's school to pick her up, fulfilling his promise to get her himself twice a week, he felt something he hadn't felt in 3 years. Not happiness, exactly. Not confidence. But something adjacent to hope. The sense that he was finally moving towards something instead of just running from pain. Emma bounded out of school with a painting she'd made in art class, a T-Rex in a field of flowers. The composition cheerfully illogical. "Do you like it, Daddy?" Mrs. Robertson said it was creative. "I love it. What made you paint a dinosaur with flowers?" Because everyone always paints dinosaurs being scary. But maybe they liked pretty things too. Maybe they weren't just about being dangerous. Emma looked at him seriously. "Mrs. Robertson says we don't have to be just one thing. We can be scary and beautiful, strong and scared, brave and worried, all at the same time." Ryan knelt down to his daughter's level, looking at her painting with new eyes. A dinosaur in flowers. Strength and beauty together. Danger and tenderness combined. Maybe Emma understood better than any of them what it meant to be fully human, complicated and contradictory and trying. "Mrs. Robertson is very smart," Ryan said. "I know. She said you're coming to parent-teacher conference next week." "I am. Wouldn't miss it." "You say that a lot." "I know, but I mean it this time." Ryan stood, taking Emma's hand. "Want to get ice cream?" "It's Wednesday. We don't get ice cream on Wednesdays." "New rule. We get ice cream whenever we want to celebrate something." Emma's face lit up. "What are we celebrating?" Ryan thought about Victoria in 5 days, walking out of her cage. About himself choosing integrity over security. About Emma's painting that refused to accept that things could only be one way. We're celebrating being brave, even when we're scared. "I'm not scared," Emma said confidently. "I know you're not, Pumpkin. You're teaching me how." They got ice cream, chocolate chip for Emma, coffee for Ryan, and sat at a sticky table in the shop, and Emma told him about her day in excruciating detail. Every moment of recess, every answer she'd gotten right in math, every interaction with her friend Zoe. And Ryan listened like it was the most important story he'd ever heard, because maybe it was. This was what mattered. This moment, this daughter, this choice to be present instead of absent, engaged instead of numb, alive instead of just surviving. In 5 days, everything would change. Michael would discover Victoria's betrayal. Ryan would lose his job. The careful security he'd built would crumble. But sitting across from his daughter, watching her explain why chocolate chip was objectively superior to all other ice cream flavors, Ryan felt something crystallize in his chest. He'd spent 3 years building a life defined by what he'd lost. Maybe it was time to start building one defined by what he chose. And he chose this. Emma. Integrity. The hard right over the easy wrong. Whatever came next, he'd face it knowing he'd finally started teaching his daughter the lesson that mattered most. That you don't measure a life by its safety, but by its courage. Not by what you protected yourself from, but by what you stood up for. The ice cream was cold and sweet. Emma's laughter was warm and real. And for the first time in 3 years, Ryan Cole felt like he was exactly where he needed to be. The 5 days passed like a held breath. Ryan went through the motions of his job with mechanical precision, driving Michael to meetings and dinners and airport runs, always professional, always invisible. He drove Victoria to yoga classes and charity luncheons and the gallery opening she'd been dreading, watching her perform the role of devoted wife with an actress's skill. They didn't speak beyond what was necessary, didn't acknowledge the countdown happening in both their heads. Friday was coming. Friday, everything would detonate. On Thursday night, Ryan couldn't sleep. He lay in his narrow bed staring at the water-stained ceiling, doing math he'd done 100 times already. He had $4,000 in savings, 3 months of rent if he was careful, 2 if Emma needed anything unexpected. His car was paid off but needed new tires. His resume was solid but unremarkable. Single father, high school diploma, 3 years of luxury driving experience. Not exactly a recipe for immediate employment in a city where people with master's degrees competed for entry-level positions. His phone lit up at 2:17 a.m. Victoria, texting from what had to be her 5th burner number this week. "Can't sleep. Tomorrow feels impossible." Ryan typed back. "Second thoughts?" Terror thoughts. What if I'm making the biggest mistake of my life? What if you're making the bravest choice of your life? Three dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, my hands won't stop shaking. Ryan understood that feeling. The physical manifestation of a decision so large your body couldn't contain it. He'd felt it in the hospital corridor 3 years ago when they'd asked him to sign the papers to take Sarah off life support. The same trembling certainty that everything was about to irrevocably change. That means you're alive, he typed. That means you care. That means it matters. I keep thinking about the apartment. 600 square feet. No dishwasher. Street parking. I've spent 7 years in a mansion with an ocean view, and I'm about to trade it for a studio where I can hear my neighbors through the walls. I live in 800 square feet with Emma. The couple next door fights about money every Thursday. The hot water cuts out randomly. The elevator breaks monthly. And you know what? It's still home. It's still mine. A longer pause this time, then, I signed the divorce papers tonight. They're in my car, in a folder under the driver's seat. My lawyer has copies. Everything's ready. How does it feel? Like standing on the edge of a cliff, like I could still turn around, like I should turn around. Ryan sat up in bed, suddenly fully awake. This was the moment, the place where courage either held or broke. Victoria, I need you to listen to me. You don't have to do this tomorrow. You can wait. You can think longer. But if you do file, if you take that leap, I need you to understand something. What? It's going to hurt. You're going to doubt yourself. You're going to have moments where you think you made a terrible mistake, where that studio apartment feels like failure and the mansion feels like what you deserved. Ryan paused, choosing his words carefully. But those moments don't mean you were wrong. They just mean that freedom is hard. That choosing yourself after years of being chosen for is terrifying. That you're human. The three dots pulsed for almost a minute. How did you get through it? After Sarah? I didn't, for a long time. I just survived. But then Emma asked me if I was happy, and I realized surviving wasn't enough. That I owed her and myself the chance to actually live. Ryan thought about his daughter asleep in the next room, about the promises he'd made and was finally keeping. You're giving yourself that chance tomorrow. Don't let fear talk you out of it. What if I'm not strong enough? You've been strong enough to stay for 7 years. You're definitely strong enough to leave. They texted back and forth until 3:30 a.m., Victoria's fear ebbing and flowing like tide. Ryan stayed with her through it, offering no platitudes, just presence. By the time they said goodnight, Victoria's messages had steadied. She could do this. She would do this. Tomorrow at 9 a.m., while Michael thought she was at yoga, she'd drive to her lawyer's office and file. Then she'd go to the mansion one last time, pack her essentials, and leave. Ryan finally fell asleep around 4, dreaming of Emma jumping from swings and dinosaurs and flower fields and doors that might be locked or might be open depending on whether you had the courage to try them. His alarm screamed at 6:30. Friday. The day everything changed, Michael called at 7:15. Ryan, I need you at the house by 8. I have an early meeting in Santa Monica and Victoria's car is making a noise. Can you take a look at it before you drive me? Ryan's stomach clenched. Victoria's car. The car with divorce papers hidden under the driver's seat. Of course, sir. I'll be there. He got Emma up and ready in record time, his mind racing. Should he text Victoria, warn her? But Michael might be monitoring her phone. Should he get to the mansion early, remove the papers himself? But what excuse would he have for accessing her car? Mrs. Chen arrived right as they were finishing breakfast, and Emma hugged Ryan extra tight before he left. You okay, Daddy? You seem worried. I'm fine, Pumpkin. Just a busy day. Is today the day you told me about? The one where things might change? Ryan had tried to prepare her gently over the past week, explained that his job might end soon, that they might need to tighten their belts. The change wasn't always bad, even when it was scary. Maybe. We'll see. I'm not scared, Emma said with 7-year-old confidence. We're brave, remember? We're brave, Ryan confirmed, hoping it was true. The drive to Pacific Palisades felt longer than usual, traffic crawling on the 10, Ryan's hands slick on the wheel. He arrived at 7:52, pulled into the service entrance, and immediately saw Victoria's white Mercedes SUV parked in its usual spot. The The keys were on the hook in the garage where she always left them. Michael was nowhere in sight. This was it. Ryan could grab the papers, destroy them, protect Victoria from discovery for at least another day. Or he could do nothing, trust that she'd be gone before Michael found them, hope that the universe would align in her favor just this once. He was reaching for the keys when Michael appeared in the doorway from the house. There you are. The noise is coming from the front passenger side. Probably just a rock in the brake pad, but Victoria gets nervous about these things. I'll check it out, sir. Michael stood there watching, arms crossed, as Ryan opened the driver's door and slid in to pop the hood. The folder was exactly where Victoria had said it would be, under the seat, just visible if you knew to look for it. Ryan's heart hammered. Michael was 10 feet away. If he glanced in, if he saw the folder, if he opened it. Actually, Ryan, I need to take a call. Just come find me when you're done. Michael turned and walked back into the house, and Ryan exhaled shakily. He popped the hood, got out, and actually did inspect the brakes. There was indeed a small stone wedged in the pad. Ryan removed it, closed the hood, and returned the keys to the hook, the divorce papers still safely hidden. He'd bought Victoria a few more hours. The drive to Santa Monica was tense. Michael seemed preoccupied, checking his phone constantly, his jaw tight. Victoria seemed off this morning, he said suddenly. Distant. Did she mention anything to you, any concerns? The trap again. Always the trap. No, sir, I haven't spoken with Mrs. Ashford beyond standard pleasantries. I'm worried about her. Michael's voice carried genuine emotion, which somehow made it worse. She's been different since starting that medication. More withdrawn. The psychiatrist said it might take time to adjust, but I'm concerned it's making things worse instead of better. Ryan said nothing, just drove and let Michael fill the silence with his constructed narrative. Poor Victoria, struggling with mental health. Poor Michael, doing everything he could to help. It was masterful gaslighting, and if Ryan hadn't known the truth, he might have believed it. After dropping Michael at his meeting, Ryan checked his phone. A text from Victoria, sent at 8:47 a.m. At the lawyer's office. Papers filed. It's done. Then another at 8:51. Heading to the house now. Will be gone before Michael gets home. Thank you for everything. Ryan drove aimlessly for the next hour, too nervous to go home, too invested to disconnect. At 10:23, Victoria texted again. I'm out. I'm really out. Sitting in my new apartment with 2 suitcases and a box of art supplies, and I can't stop crying. Happy tears or scared tears, Ryan typed. Both, all the tears, every possible tear. Ryan, what did I just do? You chose yourself. You chose life. I chose a studio apartment in Silver Lake and a waitressing job. I chose to blow up my entire existence for uncertainty. You chose freedom. Everything else is just details. Ryan's phone rang. Michael Ashford. Here it comes, Ryan thought, answering. Yes, sir. Where are you? Michael's voice was cold, controlled, dangerous. Just finished getting gas. Did you need something? I need you to come to the house. Now. The line went dead. Ryan sat in the gas station parking lot, hands trembling on the wheel. Michael knew. He had to know. The timeline was too perfect. Victoria filed at 9, was gone by 10, and now at 10:30 Michael was calling Ryan home. Someone had tipped him off, or he'd called the house and found her gone, or he'd checked her car and found the papers missing. Ryan could run. Could text Michael some excuse, could pack up Emma and drive east until Los Angeles was just a dot in the rear view, could start over somewhere cheaper, somewhere with no complications. Instead, he drove to Pacific Palisades. Michael was waiting in his office, standing at the window overlooking the infinity pool and the city beyond. He didn't turn when Ryan entered. My wife filed for divorce this morning. Did you know about this? No point in lying now. Yes, sir. How long have you known? A few weeks. Finally, Michael turned and his face was a mask of controlled fury. You've been driving my wife to meet with divorce attorneys, to plan her exit, to betray me, all while taking my money, enjoying my trust, having access to my home and my life. I've been driving her where she has to go. That's my job. Your job is loyalty. Your job is to the person who signs your paycheck. Michael's voice was ice. Did you sleep with her? What? No. Absolutely not. Don't lie to me. A man doesn't help a woman leave her husband unless there's something in it for him. What did she promise you? Money? A relationship? What was your price? Ryan felt anger rise in his chest, hot and clean. Not everyone operates on transactions, Mr. Ashford. Some people help because it's right, because a woman was trapped and scared and needed someone to believe her. Trapped? Michael laughed, sharp and bitter. I gave her everything, a beautiful home, financial security, a life most women dream of, and she repays me by running to my employee, filling his head with lies about being trapped. They're not lies. You controlled every aspect of her life, what she wore, where she went, who she talked to. You made her doubt her own sanity. That's abuse, Mr. Ashford, even if it happens in a mansion. Michael's face went dark. You have no idea what you're talking about. Victoria has always been fragile, unstable. I protected her from herself, from her worst impulses. Without me, she'll fall apart. Or maybe without you, she'll finally figure out who she actually is. The silence that followed was arctic. Michael walked to his desk, opened a drawer, pulled out a folder. I had my attorney draw these up this morning. Effective immediately, your employment is terminated. You'll receive 2 weeks severance, more generous than you deserve, and your health insurance continues through the end of the month. After that, you're on your own. Ryan had known this was coming, but hearing it still felt like a punch to the gut. 2 weeks severance, 1 month of insurance, then nothing. He thought about Emma's asthma medication, about the rent due in 2 weeks, about the new tires his car desperately needed. I understand, sir. You understand? Michael's voice rose. You just destroyed your career, your reputation, your ability to provide for your daughter. For what? For a woman you barely know? For some misguided sense of nobility? For the ability to look my daughter in the eye and tell her I did the right thing. The right thing? Michael's laugh was harsh. The right thing would have been loyalty to the man who gave you a chance, who paid you well, treated you fairly, trusted you with his family. But you threw that away to help my wife have her little rebellion. And for what? She'll be back. Give her 2 months of struggling to pay rent, of working for tips, of realizing how hard life is without money, and she'll come crawling back. And I might even take her, because unlike you, I understand forgiveness. Ryan met Michael's eyes steadily. She won't come back. She's stronger than you think, stronger than you ever let her be. We'll see about that. Michael pushed the termination papers across the desk. Sign these, then get out of my house. And Ryan, I'll make sure every luxury service in this city knows what you did. Betraying your employer's trust, inappropriate involvement with a client. You'll be lucky to get work driving for Uber. Ryan signed the papers, his hand steady despite the fear coursing through him. This was it, the moment he'd known was coming since that first night at the Blue Note. The price of choosing integrity over security. I need to ask you something, Ryan said, still seated. Did you ever actually love her, Victoria? Or was she just another acquisition, another thing to own and control and shape into what you wanted? Michael's face tightened. Get out. Because I think you did love her, in your way. But your way of loving is owning, possessing, making someone small enough to fit in your pocket. Ryan stood. And that's not love, Mr. Ashford. That's just another kind of prison. Get out. Ryan walked out of the office, through the mansion he'd navigated countless times, past the rooms full of beautiful things that belonged to people who had everything except what mattered. He got in his own car, not the Mercedes, and drove away from Pacific Palisades for the last time. His phone rang before he hit the Pacific Coast Highway. Emma's school. His heart seized. Hello? Mr. Cole, this is Principal Morrison. I'm calling because Emma seems upset today. She's not ill, but she asked if you could come get her. Is everything all right? Ryan checked his watch. 11:47 a.m. He'd just lost his job, his insurance, his future security. Everything was decidedly not all right. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Emma was waiting in the nurse's office again, small and miserable, clutching her brachiosaurus. When she saw Ryan, her face crumpled. Did it happen? Did you lose your job? Ryan knelt beside her. How did you know? I just knew. This morning you hugged me different, tighter, like you were saying goodbye to something. Emma's eyes were wet. Are we going to be okay? This was the moment. Ryan could lie, could reassure her with false certainty, could pretend he had everything under control, or he could give her the truth and trust that she was strong enough to handle it. I don't know, Pumpkin. Honestly, I don't know. I lost my job today because I helped someone who needed help, and that means things are going to be hard for a while, really hard. But we'll figure it out together, okay? You and me. Will we have to move? Maybe, probably. I'll need to find a cheaper place while I look for new work. Will I have to change schools? I'm going to do everything I can to prevent that, but I can't promise. Emma processed this with the seriousness of a child learning that adults don't have all the answers. Then she hugged him, fierce and tight. I'm scared, Daddy. Me too, baby. Me too. But we're still brave? Ryan held his daughter, breathing in strawberry shampoo and childhood and all the reasons he'd made this impossible choice. Yeah, Em, we're still brave. They went home together, Emma chattering nervously to fill the silence, Ryan's mind already cataloging everything he needed to do. Update resume, apply for unemployment, start job hunting, call Mrs. Chen and negotiate cheaper childcare, figure out if Emma qualified for free lunch at school. The list was overwhelming, crushing, terrifying. His phone buzzed. Victoria. Are you okay? Did Michael fire you? Yes. I'm so sorry. This is my fault. If I hadn't asked for your help, Stop. You didn't make me do anything. I chose this knowing exactly what it would cost. Ryan watched Emma spread her homework across their kitchen table, trying to maintain normalcy in a world that had just shifted under their feet. How are you doing? Terrified. My waitressing interview is in an hour and I can't remember how to talk to people without sounding like a rich lady slumming it. Victoria's laugh was shaky. But I unpacked my art supplies, set up a little corner by the window. It's not much, but it's mine. That's everything. Ryan, I need you to know I'm going to pay you back. Once I get settled, once I have income, I'm going to make sure you don't suffer for helping me. I don't want your money. But your daughter, my daughter needs to see that doing right matters more than doing easy. You don't owe me anything except to not waste this chance you've taken. Ryan paused. Paint something beautiful. Live loudly. Prove that freedom is worth the price. After they hung up, Ryan sat at the table with Emma and helped her with math homework, both of them pretending this was just a normal Friday afternoon. But Emma kept glancing at him, worry etched in her young face, and finally she asked the question he'd been dreading. Daddy, are you going to be sad like when Mommy died? The question broke something open in Ryan's chest. What do you mean, sweetheart? After Mommy died, you stopped smiling, stopped laughing. You were there, but not really there. Emma's voice was small. Is it going to be like that again? Because I miss the daddy who laughs. Ryan pulled her into his lap, this girl who was too wise for 7. No, baby, it's not going to be like that. This time I'm scared, but I'm awake. Does that make sense? Not really. When Mommy died, I went numb. I stopped feeling anything except the need to keep you safe. But lately I've been waking up, feeling things again. And yeah, right now I'm scared because I lost my job and I don't know what comes next. But I'm here. I'm present. I'm not going away inside myself. Emma seemed to accept this. She returned to her homework, laboriously working through subtraction problems, and Ryan let himself feel the full weight of what he'd done. No job. Dwindling savings. A daughter depending on him. The smart, safe, practical choice would have been to keep his head down, keep his mouth shut, keep collecting that paycheck. But he'd made a different choice. And sitting here with Emma, helping her carry the 2, watching her pink tongue stick out in concentration, Ryan couldn't quite regret it. He was terrified, yes. Uncertain, absolutely. But for the first time in 3 years, he felt like himself. Like a person making choices instead of a function performing tasks. His phone rang again. Unknown number. Ryan answered warily. Hello? Ryan Cole? A woman's voice, professional and brisk. Yes? This is Amanda Chen from Pacific Legal Aid. Victoria Ashford gave me your name. She said you recently lost your job due to circumstances related to assisting her with a domestic situation, and that you might need legal advice regarding wrongful termination. Ryan's mind raced. I'm not sure I can afford. Our services are free for qualifying individuals. Victoria already spoke with our director. If you're willing, we'd like to review your case. Michael Ashford has significant resources, but that doesn't mean he gets to destroy your livelihood for doing the right thing. Hope flickered, small but real. What would that involve? Come in Monday morning, bring any documentation you have, employment contract, termination papers, any communications with Mr. Ashford. We'll see if we have grounds for a suit. No guarantees, but Victoria seems to think you have a strong case for retaliation. After getting the details and hanging up, Ryan sat in stunned silence. Victoria had thought of him, had already started trying to mitigate the damage her freedom had cost him. The gesture didn't erase his financial terror, didn't magically solve everything, but it reminded him that choosing to help someone could create ripples beyond what you saw. Emma looked up from her homework. Was that a good call or a bad call? A maybe good call, we'll see. That's better than a definitely bad call. Ryan laughed, surprising himself. Yeah, Pumpkin, that's definitely better. They spent the rest of the afternoon together, Emma working on homework while Ryan started updating his resume. It felt surreal, typing out his qualifications, trying to make 3 years of luxury driving sound impressive to potential employers. But he worked at it, determined to find something, anything, that would let him keep Emma in her school and food on their table. At dinner, spaghetti with sauce from a jar, the budget meal he'd perfected over 3 years, Emma asked, "What's going to happen to Victoria, your friend who you helped?" "She's going to start over, build a new life for herself." "Was she sad before? Like you were sad?" "Not sad exactly, more like hollow, like she was pretending to be alive instead of actually living." Emma twirled spaghetti thoughtfully. "And now she's going to actually live?" "Yeah, that's the plan." "That's good. Everyone should actually live." Emma looked at him seriously. "You're actually living too now, right? Even though you're scared about money?" Out of the mouths of babes, for the 100th time. "Yeah, Em, I'm actually living now." "Good, because I like this daddy better, even if we have to eat more spaghetti." That night, after Emma fell asleep, Ryan sat on his cramped balcony overlooking the parking lot and the lights of Los Angeles beyond. His phone buzzed. Victoria again. "I got the job. I start waitressing Monday night. The manager seemed skeptical about my lack of recent experience, but I convinced her I could handle it." A pause. "Ryan, I painted tonight for 3 hours. Just me and a canvas and everything I've been holding inside for 7 years." "What did you paint?" "A woman walking through a door. Behind her, everything is gold and beautiful and suffocating. In front of her, everything is gray and uncertain and terrifying. But she's walking forward anyway. She's choosing the uncertainty. That's beautiful. It's rough. My technique is so rusty. But it's honest." Victoria's voice caught. "Thank you for helping me get here. For believing me when I couldn't believe myself. Thank you for reminding me what courage looks like." They talked for a while longer, two people who'd jumped off different cliffs and were learning to trust that they'd land somewhere worth the fall. When they hung up, Ryan sat in the silence, letting himself feel everything he'd been pushing down. Fear about money, uncertainty about the future, guilt about what this meant for Emma. But also something else. Something that felt like integrity, like alignment between who he wanted to be and who he actually was. He'd lost his job, yes, lost his financial security, absolutely, but he'd gained something harder to quantify and impossible to price, the ability to look himself in the mirror without flinching. Inside, Emma slept peacefully, her brachiosaurus tucked under her arm, her dinosaur painting taped to the wall above her bed. A T-Rex in a field of flowers, strong and beautiful, scary and gentle. All the contradictions that made up a life fully lived. Ryan went to bed that night unemployed, nearly broke, and more uncertain about the future than he'd been since Sarah died. But he slept better than he had in months, his hand over his heart, feeling that seed of hope that had taken root the night he'd first driven Victoria to the Blue Note. It was growing now, pushing up through concrete, reaching for light. It didn't know what it would become, only that it was alive and growing and refusing to stay buried. Sometimes that was enough. Sometimes that was everything. The weekend felt like standing in the eye of a hurricane. Ryan knew chaos was circling, job applications to submit, bills to reorganize, a future to rebuild. But for those 2 days, he gave himself and Emma permission to just breathe. They went to the beach on Saturday, the free one with the rocky shore that tourists avoided. Emma collected shells and built sandcastles that the tide immediately destroyed, laughing each time and starting over. Ryan watched her resilience, her ability to create something beautiful, knowing it wouldn't last, and thought maybe she was teaching him something about impermanence and joy. On Sunday, they visited the library, another free activity, and Emma checked out 6 books about dinosaurs while Ryan browsed the job listings on the public computers. Security guard positions, delivery driver openings, warehouse work. Nothing that paid what Michael Ashford had, nothing with benefits, but Ryan applied to 15 jobs in 2 hours, his desperation carefully hidden behind professional cover letters. Monday morning arrived with the weight of consequence. Ryan dropped Emma at school, her hug lasting longer than usual, her whispered, "I love you, Daddy," sounding like both reassurance and worry. Then he drove to Pacific Legal Aid in downtown Los Angeles, the termination papers from Michael Ashford folded in his jacket pocket like evidence of a crime. The office was in an older building, the kind Los Angeles was slowly losing to glass towers and luxury developments. Amanda Chen turned out to be a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a handshake that communicated competence. She led Ryan to a small conference room and gestured for him to sit. "Victoria spoke highly of you," Amanda began, opening a folder. "She said you risked everything to help her escape an abusive situation and that your employer terminated you in retaliation." "That's accurate." "Walk me through the timeline. Start from the beginning." Ryan told her everything. The first drive to the Blue Note, Victoria's confession about feeling trapped, Michael's increasing pressure for Ryan to monitor and report on his wife's behavior, the psychiatrist appointment that was really about establishing a narrative of instability. Amanda took notes, her expression neutral, occasionally asking clarifying questions. When Ryan finished, Amanda sat back. "This is textbook retaliation. Your employer explicitly asked you to participate in controlling behavior toward his spouse, and when you refused, he terminated your employment. The fact that he's also attempting to blacklist you in the industry strengthens the case." "He's blacklisting me?" Victoria mentioned he'd told her he was making calls to other luxury service companies, making sure they knew you were unreliable and had boundary issues with clients. Amanda's air quotes were pointed. "That's defamation, and it's actionable." Ryan felt sick. He'd known Michael would be angry, but systematically destroying his ability to work felt like overkill. What are my options? "We can send a cease and desist regarding the defamation. We can also file a wrongful termination suit, though, I'll be honest, cases against wealthy defendants are challenging. They have resources to drag things out, to make litigation expensive and exhausting." Amanda met his eyes. "But they're not impossible. And sometimes the threat of exposure is enough to force a settlement. I don't want his money. I just want him to stop sabotaging my ability to find work." "That's reasonable. Let me draft some letters, make some calls. In the meantime, keep documenting everything. Every job rejection, every interaction with potential employers. If anyone mentions Ashford's name or references hearing things about you, write it down." Ryan left the legal aid office feeling slightly less powerless, but no less terrified. He had advocacy now, but advocacy didn't pay rent. He spent the afternoon filling out more applications, grocery stores, gas stations, anywhere that was hiring. By evening, his email inbox had 3 automated rejections and 1 interview request for a night security position that paid $13 an hour. He took it. That night, Victoria called while Ryan was helping Emma with her reading homework. He stepped into the hallway to answer. "How was your first shift?" he asked. "Humbling, my feet hurt, I dropped a tray of drinks, and I made $43 in tips over 6 hours. Victoria's laugh was shaky. "But I survived, and the other waitresses were kind, even when I had no idea what I was doing." "That's something." "Ryan, I heard from my lawyer. Michael's attorney called. He's demanding I return to the house for mediation. Says if I don't, he'll freeze all marital assets and file a countersuit claiming I abandoned the marriage." Victoria's voice tightened. "He's also claiming I had an affair. With you." Ryan's stomach dropped. What? He doesn't have proof because it's not true, but he's putting it in the filing anyway, trying to paint me as unfaithful and you as the catalyst for destroying our marriage. Victoria was crying now. I'm so sorry. I've dragged you into my mess and now he's trying to destroy both of us. He's desperate. That's what this is. He's lost control and he's flailing. Desperate men with unlimited resources are dangerous, Ryan. So are people who've decided they're done being afraid. They talked until Emma called for him, needing help with a difficult word. After hanging up, Ryan sat with his daughter and listened to her sound out brachiosaur with careful concentration, and he thought about how Michael's lies could poison any future employment, any custody proceeding, any chance at rebuilding. But he also thought about Victoria painting doors and walking toward uncertainty, about Emma asking if they were still brave, about the choice he'd made to stand for something instead of just survive. The interview for the security guard position was Tuesday afternoon. The manager, a tired-looking man named Marcus, barely glanced at Ryan's resume before explaining the job. Overnight shifts at a storage facility, 12-hour blocks from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m., 4 nights a week. Minimum wage plus $2. No benefits. Take it or leave it. Ryan took it. He started that night. The storage facility was in Van Nuys, all concrete and fluorescent lights, and the echo of his footsteps on empty corridors. Ryan walked the perimeter every hour, checked locks, monitored security cameras showing nothing but darkness and the occasional rat. It was mind-numbing work, the kind that gave you too much time to think, and Ryan spent those long nights cataloging his failures and rebuilding his plans. Emma was struggling. Mrs. Chen reported that she'd been quiet lately, withdrawn. When Ryan picked her up from school on Wednesday afternoon, exhausted from sleeping only 4 hours after his shift, Emma's teacher pulled him aside. She's been distracted in class, not herself. Is everything all right at home? Ryan wanted to laugh at the question. Everything was decidedly not all right. But he just nodded and said they were going through some transitions, and the teacher gave him that look of professional sympathy that meant she'd seen this before. Single parent struggling, kid bearing the weight. That evening, Ryan made spaghetti again. They were on a strict budget now, and Emma pushed her food around her plate without eating. What's wrong, Pumpkin? Madison's having a birthday party on Saturday, at one of those places with trampolines and pizza. She invited me. Ryan knew what was coming. That sounds fun. It costs $25 per kid. Emma wouldn't meet his eyes. I told her I probably can't go. $25. Less than 2 hours of tips for Victoria at the restaurant. A rounding error in Michael Ashford's daily spending. But for Ryan right now, it was groceries for 3 days or gas to get to work. It was the difference between keeping the lights on and choosing which bill to pay late. Emma, look at me. When she did, her eyes were wet. You're going to that party. I'll figure it out. But money is tight. I heard you on the phone with the landlord. You asked if you could pay rent in 2 parts this month. How much had his 7-year-old been absorbing? How much had he failed to shield her from? We're managing, sweetheart, and you deserve to go to birthday parties and be a kid. That's not negotiable. But what if? No, what ifs? You're going. Ryan reached across the table and took her hand. I lost my job, but I didn't lose my ability to make sure you have a childhood, okay? Emma nodded, but her smile didn't reach her eyes, and Ryan felt the weight of his choices pressing down. He'd done the right thing helping Victoria. He still believed that, but watching his daughter sacrifice her happiness to ease his burden made the cost feel crushing. After Emma went to bed, Ryan sat at their kitchen table with bills spread out like accusations. Rent was due in 10 days, car insurance in 12. The electric bill was already past due. His security guard paychecks would cover maybe 2/3 of their expenses, leaving a gap that widened every day. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Amanda Chen. Michael Ashford's attorney called. They're offering a settlement, $15,000 in exchange for your silence about Victoria's case and a signed NDA. Thoughts? Ryan stared at the message. $15,000. 3 months of runway, maybe 4 if he was careful. Enough to keep Emma in her school, to buy her that birthday party and new shoes and maybe even a small Christmas. All he had to do was sign a paper saying he'd never talk about what Michael Ashford had done to his wife. All he had to do was let the abuse stay hidden. Ryan typed back, "What does Victoria think?" Amanda's response came quickly. "She says it's your choice, but she'd understand if you took it. She knows you have a daughter to support." Ryan put the phone down and walked to Emma's room. She was asleep, curled around her brachiosaurus, her dinosaur drawing still taped above her bed. T-Rex in flowers. Strong and gentle, brave and scared. What was he teaching her? That integrity could be bought? That you stood up for what was right only when it was convenient, when it didn't cost too much? He picked up his phone and texted Amanda. "No deal. Tell them I'm not interested in their money or their silence." Amanda's response took a few minutes. "Are you sure? This could mean the difference between keeping your apartment and losing it." "I'm sure." Ryan didn't sleep that night. He lay in bed doing math, trying to figure out how to make $12 an hour cover $1,500 in rent, plus utilities, plus food, plus Emma's needs. The numbers didn't work. They came close, but there was always a gap, always something that didn't quite add up. At 4 a.m., he got up and started looking at apartments in cheaper neighborhoods. There were places in Reseda, in Canoga Park, where rent was $900 for a studio. He could take the smaller space, sleep on a pull-out couch, give Emma the only bedroom. It would be tight, suffocatingly tight, but it would work. He was scrolling through listings when his phone rang. Victoria. "Did I wake you?" she asked. "I was already up. You okay?" "I couldn't sleep. I keep thinking about Michael's settlement offer. Ryan, you should take it. $15,000 could save you. It could also silence you, make it easier for him to paint you as the unstable one who destroyed the marriage with no consequences for his behavior." "But your daughter..." "My daughter needs to know that her father keeps his word, that standing up for people matters more than money." Ryan paused. "I promised her we were brave. I can't sell that promise for $15,000. Victoria was quiet for a long moment. "I don't deserve you." "Yes, you do. You deserve people who believe you, who see you, who think your freedom is worth fighting for." "I sold a painting," Victoria said suddenly, "one of the new ones. A gallery owner came into the restaurant. She recognized me from my old shows. I told her I was painting again, and she asked to see my work. She bought one piece for $500 and wants to show 3 more in a group exhibition next month." "Victoria, that's amazing. It's $500. It's not life-changing money, but it's mine. I earned it with my hands and my vision and my work." Her voice cracked. "And it feels better than any of Michael's money ever did." They talked until Ryan had to get ready for Emma's morning routine, Victoria describing the painting she'd sold, a woman emerging from water, dripping gold but reaching for gray sky. Ryan listened and heard not just what she was creating, but who she was becoming. 2 weeks crawled by. Ryan worked his overnight shifts, slept fitfully during the day, spent every free moment with Emma trying to make up for the stress she was absorbing. The birthday party came and went. Ryan found the $25 by selling his old Xbox, worth more in nostalgia than practical use. And Emma came home happy, talking about trampolines and cake. "Thank you for letting me go, Daddy." "Of course, Pumpkin. You should always go to birthday parties, even when money is tight, especially then, because joy matters, even in hard times. Maybe especially in hard times." Amanda Chen called with an update. Michael's legal team was backing off the defamation campaign. The cease and desist had worked. Threatening to expose his controlling behavior made him retreat. But the wrongful termination suit would take months, maybe years. Ryan accepted this. Justice was slow, but at least it was possible. Victoria's divorce proceedings ground forward. Michael contested everything, the division of assets, the timeline of separation, even which furniture Victoria could take from the house. His attorney painted her as mentally unstable, ungrateful, a woman having a crisis who'd destroyed a good marriage. Victoria's attorney countered with documentation of control, isolation, financial manipulation. It was ugly. But Victoria held firm. 3 months after Ryan lost his job, on a cold December morning, he got a call from a number he didn't recognize. A woman's voice, professional, but warm. "Mr. Cole? This is Jennifer Martinez from Elite Executive Transport. I received your application for a driving position about 2 months ago, and I'm calling to schedule an interview if you're still interested." Ryan sat up straighter. Elite Executive Transport was one of the premier luxury driving services in Los Angeles. He'd applied on a whim, certain they'd never call. Yes, absolutely. I'm very interested. Excellent. Would Thursday at 10 work for you? The interview was in a sleek office in Century City. Jennifer Martinez turned out to be the company's operations director, a woman in her 50s who reviewed Ryan's resume with careful attention. Your experience with Ashford is impressive. 3 years of high-level service. Excellent references from previous employers. She looked up. Though I notice you left rather abruptly. Can you explain? Ryan had prepared for this question. I left because I was asked to participate in monitoring and controlling Mr. Ashford's wife in ways I felt were inappropriate. When I declined, my employment was terminated. Jennifer's expression didn't change. That's quite an accusation. It's the truth. I have documentation if you'd like to see it. Text messages, recordings of conversations where Mr. Ashford explicitly asked me to report on his wife's movements and mental state. You recorded your employer? Only after he started asking me to do things I felt were wrong. I wanted protection. Ryan met her eyes steadily. I understand if that disqualifies me, but I won't work for someone who asks me to help them control or harm another person. That's a line I don't cross. Jennifer was quiet for a long moment, studying him. Then she leaned back in her chair. Mr. Cole, I'm going to be honest with you. Michael Ashford did call here, about 2 months ago. He told me you had boundary issues, that you'd developed an inappropriate relationship with his wife, that I shouldn't hire you under any circumstances. Ryan's heart sank. I see. But I also received a call from Victoria Ashford's divorce attorney. She explained the situation, the controlling behavior, your refusal to participate, the retaliation. She sent me documentation. Jennifer smiled slightly. Michael Ashford may have money and connections, but he underestimated how many people in this industry are women who've seen his type before. Are you offering me a position? I'm offering you a probationary position, 6 months to prove yourself. $45,000 a year starting, benefits included, with potential for advancement based on performance. Jennifer extended her hand. Our clients expect discretion and professionalism, but they also expect drivers with integrity, someone who'll speak up if they see something wrong. You've proven you have that quality. Ryan shook her hand, barely able to process what was happening. $45,000 a year. Benefits, a real job with a future. Thank you. I won't let you down. I know you won't. That's why I'm hiring you. Ryan called Victoria from the parking lot, his hands shaking. I got a job. A real job. $45,000 a year with benefits. Victoria's scream of joy was so loud he had to hold the phone away from his ear. Ryan, that's incredible. When do you start? Next Monday. I have to give notice at the security job, but they're used to high turnover. Ryan felt tears on his face. We're going to be okay. Emma and I, we're actually going to be okay. You were always going to be okay. You were just taking the long way there. That evening, Ryan picked Emma up from school and took her to their favorite ice cream place, a real celebration, not a stolen moment between crises. I have good news, Pumpkin. I got a new job. A better job, starting next week. Emma's face lit up. Really? Does that mean we don't have to move? It means we can stay in our apartment. Maybe even save a little. Things are going to get easier. Emma hugged him tight, her small body pressed against his chest. I knew you'd figure it out. You always do. Ryan held his daughter and let himself feel the relief he'd been holding at bay for months. They'd made it through. Barely, but they'd made it. 6 months passed like watching a Polaroid develop. Slowly, in increments, the image of their new life came into focus. Ryan thrived at elite executive transport, his attention to detail and genuine care for clients earning him excellent reviews. He drove tech executives to the airport, celebrities to award shows, wealthy families to weddings and funerals, and all the moments that money couldn't script. Victoria's divorce was finalized in March. She walked away with less money than she deserved. Michael's lawyers had been effective at protecting his assets, but she walked away free. The settlement gave her enough to stay in her studio apartment for a year while she built her art career. Her paintings started selling, not for millions, but for enough. Galleries in Silver Lake and downtown started showing her work. Critics noticed. A feature in a local art magazine called her pieces haunting explorations of gilded captivity and hard-won freedom. Victoria framed that review and hung it in her tiny bathroom where she'd first started painting again. Ryan and Victoria texted occasionally, updates on her art shows, news about Emma's school achievements, the small victories of people rebuilding their lives. But they didn't see each other. Their worlds had diverged, moving in parallel but separate directions. Until one Saturday in June, 8 months after everything had fallen apart and begun to rebuild. Ryan was working, driving a client to a meeting in Pasadena, when he passed a car dealership that was hosting a weekend art fair in its parking lot. He almost drove by without noticing, but something made him glance over, and there, standing beside a small booth displaying her paintings, was Victoria. He finished his client's job and came back. Found parking. Walked through the fair with his hands in his pockets, pretending to browse until he reached her booth. Victoria was explaining one of her paintings to a potential buyer, her hands animated, her face alive in a way he'd never seen during her marriage. She looked different, hair shorter, clothes simpler, lines around her eyes that spoke of laughter and stress and living. She looked real. When the buyer moved on, Victoria turned and saw Ryan. Her face broke into a genuine smile. "Ryan Cole, what are you doing here?" "I saw the art fair from the road. Thought I'd stop by." He studied her paintings, all of them variations on themes of escape, emergence, transformation. "These are incredible." "Thank you. I'm actually doing okay. Not rich, but surviving on my own terms." Victoria gestured at the booth. "The dealership owner is a friend. She lets me show here once a month. I've sold 3 pieces today." "That's amazing." They talked for a few minutes, catching up properly. Victoria asked about Emma. How was second grade going? Ryan asked about her waitressing. Was she still doing that? "Just part-time now. The painting is starting to pay enough that I can cut back." Victoria's eyes sparkled. "I'm not going to be a starving artist forever. I might actually make this work." "You already are making it work." A family approached the booth, interested in one of Victoria's larger pieces, and Ryan stepped back to give her space. He was about to leave when Victoria called after him. "Ryan, wait, I need to tell you something." He turned back. "I'm buying a car, finally getting rid of the Mercedes, too many memories attached. I'm looking at something practical and affordable, and I was planning to come by your company next week to see what you had in your fleet." Victoria paused. "Would you be willing to help me? I trust your judgment, and I could use a friend in my corner." Ryan smiled. "Of course. Come by Tuesday afternoon. I'll make sure you get something good." Tuesday arrived warm and bright. Victoria showed up at Elite Executive Transport wearing jeans and a paint-stained t-shirt, looking nothing like the woman Ryan had driven to charity galas 18 months ago. She looked better, more herself, whoever that was. Ryan helped her test drive 3 different sedans, explaining the pros and cons of each, making sure she understood what she was buying. She chose a 5-year-old Honda Accord with reasonable mileage and a price that wouldn't devastate her budget. Practical, reliable, exactly what she needed. While the finance paperwork processed, they sat in the waiting area with terrible coffee and easy conversation. "How's Emma doing? Really?" Victoria asked. "She's good. Really good. We're in a better place now, more stable, less stressed. She's joined an after-school art program. Says she wants to be a paleontologist who paints dinosaurs on the side." Ryan laughed. "She's very specific about her dreams. She gets that from her dad." "Maybe. I'm trying to teach her that dreams are worth fighting for, even when they're expensive or impractical or scary." Victoria nodded. "You're a good father, Ryan. She's lucky to have you. I'm the lucky one." The paperwork finished. Victoria signed everything, got her keys, and stood in the parking lot beside her new car, looking slightly overwhelmed. "This is mine. Actually mine. Bought with my money, in my name, with no strings attached. How does it feel?" "Terrifying and wonderful." Victoria turned to Ryan. "Listen, I know this is probably inappropriate, but would you want to get coffee sometime? Not as client and driver, not as conspirators in an escape plan, just as friends? People who went through something hard together and came out the other side?" Ryan considered this. The clean, safe answer would be to decline. Keep their lives separate, avoid any appearance of impropriety that Michael's lawyers might use.
but Ryan was tired of making only safe choices. Yeah, I'd like that. Coffee. As friends. They exchanged phone numbers, real ones this time, not burner cells bought with cash. Made plans to meet the following Saturday at a café in Silver Lake.
Not the Blue Note. That place belonged to a different chapter. Somewhere new. Somewhere that acknowledged who they were now instead of who they'd been. Saturday came. Ryan dropped Emma at a play date. She was going through a phase of being obsessed with her friend Zoe, the two of them inseparable, and drove to Silver Lake. Found the cafe Victoria had suggested, a small place with mismatched chairs and local art on the walls. Victoria was already there, nursing a latte and sketching in a notebook. She looked up when Ryan arrived, smiled, gestured to the chair across from her. You came. Did you think I wouldn't? I wasn't sure. Thought maybe you'd realize coffee with your ex-employer's ex-wife was complicated and decide it wasn't worth it. Ryan ordered his own coffee and sat down. Everything worth doing is complicated. I'm learning to be okay with that. They talked for 2 hours. Not about Michael or the divorce or the hard months after everything fell apart. Instead, they talked about now. Victoria described her upcoming gallery show, a solo exhibition, her first in 6 years. Ryan told her about Emma's dinosaur obsession and how he'd taken her to the Natural History Museum 4 times in the past 2 months because she insisted on studying the same T-Rex skeleton from every possible angle. She sounds wonderful, Victoria said. I'd love to meet her sometime, if that's okay. Ryan hesitated. Not because he didn't trust Victoria, but because introducing Emma to someone felt significant, like acknowledging that his life might include more than just the two of them surviving together. Maybe. Let's take things slow, see where this goes. This? Victoria raised an eyebrow. This friendship. This coffee. This thing where two people who helped each other through darkness figure out if they can be friends in the light. Victoria smiled. I like that. Friends in the light. No pressure, no expectations, just seeing what happens. What happened was they kept meeting. Coffee once a week turned into twice a week. Sometimes Emma came along, and Victoria would draw dinosaurs with her while Ryan ordered food. Emma took to Victoria immediately, drawn to her easy laughter and the way she treated Emma's dinosaur facts with complete seriousness. Did you know, Emma informed Victoria one afternoon, that the Brachiosaurus wasn't actually the biggest dinosaur? That's a common misconception. The Argentinosaurus was probably bigger, but we don't have complete skeletons, so we can't be sure. I did not know that, Victoria said solemnly. Thank you for educating me. After Emma went to find the bathroom, Victoria looked at Ryan. She's incredible, so smart and confident. She's teaching me how to live. Has been for a while now. Ryan watched his daughter navigate through the cafe with careful attention. After Sarah died, I thought my job was just to keep her safe. But Emma needed more than safety. She needed joy and risk and a father who was actually present. You're present now. I'm trying to be. 3 months into their coffee meetings, Victoria invited Ryan to her gallery opening. He brought Emma, who wore her favorite dinosaur dress and took the whole thing very seriously, studying each painting with concentrated attention. Why is this woman walking into the gray part? Emma asked, pointing at Victoria's centerpiece. The painting of a woman leaving gold for uncertainty. Victoria knelt beside her. Because sometimes the beautiful thing is actually a trap, and the scary gray thing is actually freedom. Oh, Emma considered this. Like when Daddy left his old job even though it paid more because his boss was mean to you? Victoria's eyes widened. She looked at Ryan. Emma knows the broad strokes, Ryan explained. I told her I lost my job because I helped someone who needed help. She filled in some details herself. Your dad is very brave, Victoria told Emma. I know. He taught me that being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means doing the right thing even when you're scared. Emma turned back to the painting. I think she's brave too, the woman in your painting. After the opening, after Emma fell asleep in the car on the drive home, Ryan carried her inside and tucked her into bed. She stirred slightly, mumbling something about paintings and dinosaurs, then settled back into sleep. Ryan's phone buzzed. Victoria. Thank you for coming tonight, and thank you for bringing Emma. She's special. She is. She liked your paintings. Asked if you'd teach her to paint sometime. I'd love that, if you're comfortable with it.
Ryan thought about comfort, about the safe choices he'd made for years that had led nowhere good. Yeah, I'm comfortable with it. Let's set something up. They started slowly. Victoria came over one Sunday afternoon with basic painting supplies and taught Emma color theory and brush techniques.
Emma painted dinosaurs naturally, T-Rexes in flower fields, brachiosauruses in oceans, pterodactyls in starry skies. Her work was enthusiastic and chaotic and full of joy. Ryan watched Victoria with his daughter and felt something shift in his chest. Not love, exactly. It was too early for that, too tentative. But possibility. The sense that maybe his life could include more than just survival and parenting. That maybe there was room for companionship, for building something new with someone who understood the cost of freedom. One evening in September, almost a year after Ryan had lost his job and Victoria had filed for divorce, they sat on Ryan's balcony while Emma slept inside. The Los Angeles skyline spread before them, all those lights representing dreams and struggles and choices. "Can I ask you something?" Victoria said. "That night at the Blue Note, the first night when I asked you to drive somewhere private instead of taking me home, what made you do it? You could have said no. You should have said no." Ryan thought about that night, about the fear in Victoria's voice that wasn't seduction but survival. "You sounded like I felt after Sarah died, like you were drowning and trying to pretend you could breathe. I recognized it. And you saved me." "No, you saved yourself. I just drove the car." Victoria reached over and took his hand. The gesture was simple, uncomplicated, just two people who'd survived hard things choosing connection. "What happens now? With us?" "I don't know. What do you want to happen?" "I want to keep having coffee, keep painting with Emma, keep figuring out who I am when I'm not trapped or running or surviving." Victoria squeezed his hand. "And maybe if we're both ready, see if we can build something together. Not because either of us needs rescuing, but because we choose it." Ryan thought about choices, about how many he'd made from fear and how few from hope. "I'd like that. Slowly, carefully, making sure Emma's okay with it." "Of course. Emma comes first. Always." They sat in comfortable silence, hands linked, watching the city breathe. Neither of them knew exactly where this was going. Neither of them had guarantees that it would work, but they were both done making decisions based only on safety and certainty. 6 more months passed. Victoria's art career grew, more gallery shows, more sales, enough income that she could quit waitressing entirely. She moved to a slightly bigger apartment, one with room for a proper studio. Ryan got promoted at Elite Executive Transport, his salary increasing to $55,000 with better benefits. Emma thrived. Her grades were excellent. Her friend circle expanded. Her confidence grew. She started asking questions about Victoria. Was she Daddy's girlfriend? Were they going to get married? Ryan answered honestly. Victoria was his friend, maybe becoming more than that. But they were taking things slow because relationships were complicated and precious and worth doing carefully. "Like painting," Emma said wisely. "You have to let the layers dry before you add more or everything gets muddy." Exactly like painting. On a warm April afternoon, Ryan picked Victoria up from her apartment for a surprise he'd been planning for weeks. Emma was at a birthday party sleepover, her social calendar now busier than his, giving them rare time alone. "Where are we going?" Victoria asked as Ryan drove west toward Santa Monica. "You'll see." He pulled up at a small garage in Mar Vista, the kind of place that specialized in classic car restoration. Inside, under a dusty tarp, sat a 1967 Mustang in primer gray, waiting for someone to love it back to life. "What is this?" Victoria asked. "My car. Or it was, years ago. I sold it after Sarah died to pay for the funeral." Ryan walked around the Mustang, running his hand over its lines. "The guy I sold it to kept it all these years. Called me last month, said he was getting too old to finish the restoration, asked if I wanted it back." "And you said yes?" "I said yes, use some of my savings. Probably not the most practical decision, but I'm trying to make room for impractical things. Things that make me happy, instead of just safe." Ryan looked at Victoria. "Want to help me restore it?" "I don't know anything about cars. And I don't know anything about art, but you've been teaching me. Maybe I can teach you." They started spending Sunday afternoons in the garage.
Ryan teaching Victoria about engines and brake systems while grease permanently stained their clothes. Emma would come sometimes, handing them tools and asking endless questions about how cars worked. It was messy and slow and full of mistakes, but it was theirs. The Mustang gradually came back to life. New paint. Victoria insisted on a deep blue she called Ocean at Midnight. New interior. Engine rebuilt from parts Ryan sourced from junkyards and specialty shops. It took 8 months of Sundays, but finally, on a December morning 2 years after Ryan had first driven Victoria to the Blue Note, the Mustang roared to life. Ryan, Victoria, and Emma stood in the garage listening to the engine purr, and Emma clapped her hands. "You did it, Daddy! You fixed it! We did it, all three of us!" That evening, Ryan drove Victoria home in the Mustang, taking the long way through Los Angeles past the Blue Note and the storage facility where he'd worked overnight shifts and the apartment building where he and Emma had struggled to survive, past all the places that had shaped their journey here. "I need to tell you something," Ryan said as they sat at a red light on Sunset Boulevard. Victoria looked over at him. "That sounds ominous." "It's not. At least I hope it's not." Ryan took a breath. "I'm in love with you. I don't know when it happened exactly. Maybe that first night when you asked me to drive somewhere safe, maybe when you taught Emma to paint, maybe yesterday when you helped me install the carburetor and got grease in your hair. But I'm in love with you, and I needed to say it out loud." Victoria was quiet for a long moment. The light turned green and Ryan drove, giving her space to process. Finally, she spoke. "I'm in love with you too, and it terrifies me." "Why?" "Because last time I loved someone, I lost myself. I'm scared of it happening again." Ryan pulled over, parked on a quiet residential street, and turned to face her fully. "I don't want you to lose yourself. I fell in love with the woman who painted doors and walked toward uncertainty and rebuilt her life from nothing. That's who I want. All of you. Exactly as you are. With room to keep growing." "You mean that?" "I've never meant anything more." Victoria kissed him then, soft and certain, and it felt like coming home to a place he'd never been. When they pulled apart, she was smiling. "So what happens now?" "Now we keep going. Keep having coffee and restoring cars and painting with Emma. Keep choosing each other every day, not because we need to, but because we want to." Ryan took her hand. "And maybe, eventually, we figure out what forever looks like for people who've learned that safety isn't the same as happiness." "I like that plan." They drove back to Victoria's apartment, made dinner together in her tiny kitchen, talked until midnight about everything and nothing. When Ryan finally left, kissing her goodnight at her door, he felt something he'd thought he'd lost forever. Hope for a future that included more than just survival. 6 months later, on Emma's 9th birthday, Ryan and Victoria sat in the backyard of the small house they'd just bought together. Nothing fancy. A 2-bedroom in Culver City that needed work, but had good bones and room for Emma and Victoria's art studio and Ryan's tools. Emma was running around with her friends, her laughter filling the air, and Ryan thought about how far they'd all come. "Happy?" Victoria asked, leaning against his shoulder. "Yeah, terrified and uncertain and definitely in over my head with this mortgage. But happy." "Good. Me too." Emma ran over, breathless and grinning. "Daddy, Victoria, can we get a dog?" Ryan and Victoria looked at each other, having the same thought. Here was another impractical thing, another choice for joy over convenience, another chance to say yes to life. "Let's talk about it," Ryan said, and Emma squealed and ran back to her friends. "We're really doing this," Victoria said softly. "Building a life together. Being a family." "Scared?" "Absolutely." "You?" "Terrified. But I'm learning that the best things are always a little terrifying." Ryan pulled her closer. "I'd rather be scared and alive than safe and empty." Victoria kissed his cheek. "From the man who taught me that courage isn't the absence of fear, but the choice to keep going anyway." They sat together watching Emma play, watching the sun set over their imperfect house and their imperfect neighborhood, and Ryan felt grateful for every hard choice that had led him here. For the night he'd driven to the Blue Note instead of straight home. For the months of struggle and uncertainty. For learning that sometimes you have to risk everything to find out what actually matters. Emma caught his eye and waved, her gap-toothed grin, now missing different teeth, wide and uninhibited. Ryan waved back, and in that moment, he understood what he'd been trying to teach her all along, that life wasn't measured by its safety, but by its courage.
Not by what you protected yourself from, but by what you chose to build. He'd lost a job and gained integrity, lost security and gained purpose, lost the careful survival he'd constructed and gained an actual life worth living. And sitting there with Victoria's hand in his and Emma's laughter in his ears and a future stretching out uncertain and beautiful before them, Ryan Cole finally understood what it meant to be truly, terrifyingly, wonderfully alive.